Chapter 12:24. In the void, outside Jade Capital Mountain, a golden disk flashed continuously. As it spun, it swept up large amounts of black profound light into it. As the golden disk spun, the black light that had landed on it actually vanished. Meanwhile, on the surface of the golden disk, a liquid that looked like ink appeared. It was contained in the center of the golden disk, and it was still like a sparkling and translucent crystal. Mirage Sun Yudu was slightly stunned. When Kongyuan Yudu and the rest of the strong practitioners of Yudu who were fighting with the cultivators of Taishu Temple saw this, they all revealed astonished expressions. This thing is slightly strange. A look of astonishment flashed past Mirage Sun Yudu's face. He looked at the golden disk and felt the strange concept of power within. Even though the black liquid in the golden plate was increasing rapidly and it looked like if this situation continued, there would be a moment when it would overflow. However, an unchangeable fact was that the Yudu profound flower that seemed to be able to destroy heaven and earth returned to peace after being absorbed by the golden plate. With a thought, large amounts of black light markings flashed in Mirage Sun Yudu's eyes. The black liquid in the golden disk instantly rippled as though it was boiling. Large amounts of black fog started to rise from within as though it was going to transform back into the original appearance of Yudu profound flower. Meanwhile, the process of the golden disk absorbing the Yudu profound flower also started to become sluggish. But before Mirage Sun Yudu could continue executing his demon power, the power of Lin Feng's heaven punishment sword formation became sharper and sharper. It ignored the black light in the surroundings and used an indomitable force to slash the Yudu profound flower in front of it. It then attacked Mirage Sun Yudu himself. Mirage Sun Yudu frowned slightly and placed his attention back on Lin Feng's attack. Meanwhile, the golden disk on the other side started to spin again and swept up large amounts of Yudu profound flower. Both sides fell into a stalemate. Lin Feng, who was shrouded by the radiance of Jade Capital Mountain, looked at the main body of the golden disk in front of him and couldn't help shaking his head with a smile. This primordial golden disk is a good item, but in the end, it's still not suitable for fighting with people. At least when facing an opponent on the level of Mirage Sun Yudu, it's not suitable for fighting. However, using this item to fight is already a waste of its ability, so I can only force it to do something beyond my capabilities. Lin Feng's eyes flickered slightly. However, this might turn into a fortuitous encounter. His right hand executed his power to fuse with Jade Capital Mountain and the life and death formation of heaven and earth to augment the heaven punishment sword formation to fight against Mirage Sun and Yudu. His left hand was pinching the incantation. In an instant, it changed hundreds of millions of times. Finally, it returned to a strange incantation. He pointed at the premier golden lamp and gently tapped it. On the surface of the primordial golden lamp, in addition to the flickering golden light, there was a silver-white light circulating in the center. This silver-white light penetrated into the void and disappeared. However, on the other side of the void, there seemed to be an extremely powerful existence that shook violently. Outside Jade Capital Mountain, the golden disk that was like a full moon also trembled slightly. The black liquid that had absorbed the profound essence of Yudu suddenly started to disappear. Mirage Sun and Yudu noticed the change at the first instant, and after feeling the marvel in detail, his gaze revealed a hint of coldness. Master of Xian's sect, your schemes aren't shallow, but aren't you underestimating me too much? After saying this, Mirage Sun didn't say anything more. The silver-white hair on his body stood up, and purple light flowed endlessly on the surface of his body. Black light markings covered his entire body and extended towards the surrounding void. Not long after, Lin Feng discovered that it was becoming harder and harder for the primordial golden lamp to absorb the profound essence of Yudu. It wasn't that Mirage Sun and Yudu had purposely restrained their power, but he was gradually familiarizing himself with the theory of the primordial golden lamp's usage and making corresponding adjustments. The violent profound essence of Yudu was still rushing towards Lin Feng like a tsunami, and it gradually ignored the primordial golden lamp. Even though the primordial golden lamp could still absorb a large amount of profound essence of Yudu, the efficiency had started to worsen, and it was dropping continuously. When the primordial golden lamp was no longer able to absorb the profound essence of Yudu, Mirage Sun and Yudu would counterattack and break the golden plate light that the primordial golden lamp had manifested. Meanwhile, the violent profound essence of Yudu attacked Lin Feng and Jade Capital Mountain continuously. It bombarded the huge blood-red sword formed by the Heaven Punishment Sword formation from all directions, wanting to destroy it. Lin Feng's gaze became slightly more solemn, but he didn't panic. He executed the sword's secrets in his right hand and the spell in his left hand at the same time. In the center of the primordial golden lamp, the power of the Baifeng that was connected by the silver-white light became more and more powerful. The battle between Lin Feng and Mirage Sun and Yudu had temporarily entered a stalemate, but on the other side, the battle between the other strong practitioners of Yudu race and the cultivators of Taishu Temple was becoming clearer and clearer. The cultivators of Taishu Temple that couldn't reconstruct the 9 heavens of the Great Void celestial gates were continuously being compressed, and they were on the verge of collapse. Empty Plains Yudu and Green Crest Yudu, the 2 Yudu great demons of the last days realm, took the lead. Including Jing Yan Yudu, the other 2 great demons of Yudu who were at the beginning and going through the tribulation followed closely behind. They stared at the cultivators of the Great Void Temple and attacked fiercely. Green Crest Yudu suppressed the Great Supreme Void Yin-Yang formation by himself, while Empty Plain Yudu targeted Dao Venerable Xian Yi and Taishu Temple, while Jing Yan Yudu found Yan Nan Lai. Not only did they prevent the people of Taishu Temple from reconstructing the 9 heavens of the Great Void celestial gates, the strong practitioners of Yudu race also prevented Dao Venerable Xian Yi and Yan Nan Lai from entering the Great Supreme Void Yin-Yang formation. If it was any other time, they would still be interested in letting the cultivators of Taishu Temple give it their all and compete with their abilities. However, they were in the midst of a war between 2 worlds, and the situation could change in an instant. Empty Plain Yudu and the rest placed killing the enemy as their priority. Even though they were stopped by their clan master, Lin Feng's powerful abilities and strange methods still made the hearts of the great demons of Yudu tremble. The people of Taishu Temple, on the other hand, were under immense pressure. They couldn't rebuild the 9 heavens of the Great Void celestial gates. If it wasn't for their extraordinary abilities, their formation would have long been broken. The pressure on Yan Nan Lai was especially huge. He was facing Jing Yan Yudu, who was at most 1 or 2 calamities of decay away from the last days realm. However, if he didn't consider the calamity of the last days, the strength of his divine arts and magic power was enough to rival many last days great demons. Jing Yan Yudu's brilliant light of Yudu that could incinerate heaven and earth was something that even the great demons of last days realm didn't dare to let go of. Even though Yan Nanlai had the support of the Great Void engraving, it wasn't easy for him to defend against Jing Yan Yudu. Dao Venerable Xian, who had already reached the last days realm, wanted to help Yan Nanlai, but he was trapped by Empty Plains Yudu. That aged Yudu beast roared continuously, and white Yudu's ethereal light of Yudu spread out in the sky, isolating Dao Venerable Xian and Taishu Temple in an independent void. They couldn't break out, and they still had to face the vast and majestic attacks of Empty Plains Yudu. On the other side, Green Crest Yudu suppressed the Supreme Void Yin-Yang Great Formation. Another 2 strong practitioners of Yudu who were in the initial calamity stage also surrounded them. It was obvious that they wanted to break the formation first. Just as the people of the Taishu Temple and the experts of the Yudu clan were fighting fiercely, even though the battle was extremely dangerous, the bodies of Dao Venerable Xian Yi and Yan Nanlai suddenly trembled. Disbelief and astonishment appeared in their eyes. Kuang Heng, Lin Daohan, and the rest who were in the Supreme Void Yin-Yang Great Formation saw this, and their hearts sank. Could the abnormality from before have happened again? Yan Nanlai took a deep breath. That's right, it's the feeling from before, and it's even clearer this time. There's someone else shaking the Haotian mirror. Dao Venerable Qing Ning's face darkened. Even if the dragon race controls the power of the mysterious sea, they shouldn't have the ability to shake the Haotian mirror. Senior Uncle Taiwan and the rest are already focused on stabilizing the defense, so they shouldn't be shaken by others. Yan Nanlai's expression was slightly complicated. It's not the dragon race. Kuang Heng and the rest were stunned. It's not the dragon race? Yan Nanlai said solemnly, this time, the feeling is even clearer. The person shaking the Haotian mirror isn't the dragon race, and he's not even in the mysterious sea. Someone outside the mysterious sea is shaking the Haotian mirror. Quang Heng and the rest's hearts sank even more. Not only could the other party shake the Haotian mirror, but they also had a way to break through the seal of the mysterious sea and reach their hands in. Just this point alone was enough to shock them. Fu Yunkong murmured, even in our Taishu temple, only the temple masters and powerful experts who have gone through at least the medium tribulation can freely activate the Haotian mirror. Who on earth is it? The leaders of the Taishu temple all had extremely ugly expressions on their faces. They were also puzzled. But after a while, Yan Nanlai's eyes suddenly moved slightly, and his face became gloomy, which was rare. Quang Heng, Lin Daohan, Fu Yunkong, and Dao Venerable Qing Ning also reacted one after another. Dao Venerable Qing Ning's face was livid, and he squeezed out 2 words from between his teeth. Dark. Emperor. Outside the boundless world, there was a medium-class world that had always been ordinary. At this moment, the scenery was completely different from before. A gray haze shrouded the medium-class world, and the whole world was dyed gray. In this gray world, there was a huge black altar standing there. The altar was 3 layers high. The bottom layer was deathly silent, as if it was a place where living beings slept forever. The middle layer was noisy and bustling, like all living beings in the world. The top layer was vast and ethereal, like the vast sky. The 3 images of heaven, earth, and man, the cycle of life and death, and the ruler of the underworld perfectly fused, forming a kind of supreme and powerful aura. A figure stood on the altar, looking down at the world like the ruler of all living beings. He looked like a teenager, and he was the ancient king of the underworld, who was now nicknamed Happy, who had been reborn in the ancient era. In the center of the altar in front of him stood a long banner. As the banner fluttered, light and shadow flashed, as if it had broken through the void realm, but it also seemed like it was just a light and shadow image. The light and shadow seemed illusory, and it could allow people's magic power and divine sense to pass through, but it was not a real realm passage. In the light and shadow image, a black sea flashing with golden light roared continuously. It was the scene in the mysterious sea. Next to the king of the underworld, Happy, stood another figure. It was a middle-aged man dressed in ancient clothes, and he had a calm and indifferent expression on his face. It was as if he had a card up his sleeve and everything was in his control. At that moment, the man was expressionless, and his eyes were like water. There seemed to be no fluctuations in his emotions. It was as if his expression would not change even if things collapsed in front of him. It was as if there was nothing more sorrowful than a dead heart, and nothing could move him anymore. The man's hands changed hand seals, and streams of magic power, divine sense entered the mysterious sea through the long banner. The king of the underworld held a life and death nether Dao fruit in one hand, and his lips curled into a faint smile. I have waited for this chance for too long. His other hand held the void gently, and the black altar under his feet flew into the air. The king of the underworld said calmly, "Before me, all is silent. Behind me, there is no life." Behind him, King Yama, Sikongyu, and the others all knelt on the ground and said in unison, "We are willing to follow our king into the life and death nether world." Chapter 12:25. The person beside the king of the underworld bore a 40 to 50% resemblance to the current temple master of Taishu Temple, Yan Nanlai. This person was one of the 4 ancient heroes of Taishu Temple, the ancestor of Yan Nanlai, and the second temple master of Taishu Temple, Yan Xinghe. In ancient times, he and the king of the underworld perished together, sending the king of the underworld into the world of the dead, but at the same time, he himself perished. Everyone thought that the king of the underworld had also perished back then, and it was naturally impossible for him to refine Yan Xinghe into an evil soul and store it in the underworld Dao fruit of life and death. As a result, after the king of the underworld was reborn, no one realized that he actually had such a powerful trump card. To be able to come back from the dead, the king of the underworld could be said to have great achievements. His understanding of the Tao of samsara and life and death made him the first person in the history of Divine Land, and everyone was amazed. However, the king of the underworld's mystique, dermic powers, and scheming methods were well hidden, and it was beyond many people's imagination. Yan Xinghe was the second temple master of Taishu Temple in history. In the era after when Qiyang perished, he was one of the top figures in divine land. Today, after a long time, his reputation surpassed Wen Qiyang, Yuehua Tian, and Huang Chen. In this era, he was the most famous of the four ancient heroes of Taishu Temple, and his life was the most widely known. Until now, many of the policies and thoughts of Taishu Temple could be traced back to the era of Yan Xinghe. His influence on Taishu Temple was among the best among all the temple masters. But now, the king of the underworld had refined such a legendary figure of the immortal Tao into an evil soul. If news of this spread, it would shake the entire divine land. It would become the greatest stain and humiliation in the history of Taishu Temple, and the king of the underworld would become the human powerhouse that Taishu Temple was most hostile to. Although King Yan Luo and the others were cheering loudly behind him, and although things were going according to his plan, the king of the underworld's gaze remained calm. He knew very well that he hadn't truly succeeded yet, and this opportunity didn't come easily. After many years of forbearance, they had purposely delivered themselves to the Netherworld Sea and suffered heavy losses from Xianmen Tianzong and Taishu Temple. The Underworld Hall's forces were wiped out on a large scale and suffered heavy losses. All of this was to make the Divine Land feel that he was no longer a threat, so that they could prepare for the war between the two worlds with the Demon Clan in peace. Although he hadn't expected that Taishu Temple and the Haotian Mirror would enter the Xian Sea of their own accord, the king of the underworld had always believed that his opportunity would only appear during the war between the two worlds. If there wasn't an opportunity, he would continue to lie low and endure. But when the opportunity presented itself, he wouldn't miss it. Just like now. If he hadn't been fighting against the Dragon Clan powerhouses and the Xian Sea, even with Yan Xinghe's evil soul, it wouldn't have been easy to shake the Haotian Mirror. Similarly, if he hadn't been fighting against the Haotian Mirror and the Taishu Temple powerhouses, his long banner wouldn't have been able to communicate with the Dragon Clan powerhouses and the Xian Sea. But at this moment, he had a chance to get his hands on the Haotian Mirror. However, before the dust settled, the king of the underworld naturally wouldn't be too happy. With the help of a special ritual and treasure, he and Yan Xinghe didn't need to enter the Xian Sea to shake the Haotian Mirror. If everything went smoothly, after they controlled the Haotian Mirror, they could even use the ritual to suck the Haotian Mirror out of the Xian Sea. During this process, the Yuan Dragon King and the other Dragon Clan powerhouses would most likely condone it. After all, if the Haotian Mirror was shaken, they could break through the Taishu Temple's defensive line faster. However, after the defensive line of the Taishu Temple was completely destroyed, the Yuan Dragon King naturally wouldn't let the king of the underworld suck the Haotian Mirror out of the Xian Sea. At that time, the pressure that the king of the underworld and Yan Xinghe had to face from the Xian Sea would definitely increase greatly. The Yuan Dragon King might even temporarily put aside the people of the Taishu Temple, whose abilities were greatly reduced, to deal with the king of the underworld first. That would be the most difficult moment of the king of the underworld's entire operation. Success or failure would be decided in an instant. Even with the king of the underworld's deep foresight, he didn't dare to say he was completely confident. On the other side, Lin Feng had rushed to White Cloud Mountain to reinforce it. Even though he was in a stalemate with the Yudu race, the situation of the battle was ever-changing. An unexpected change could happen at any time, and this made the king of the underworld very wary. However, to the king of the underworld, the opportunity in front of him was already good enough. He held the banner with one hand and patted Yan Xinghe beside him with the other. He smiled and said, "Come, let's work hard for you to regain control of the Haotian Mirror." Yan Xinghe was expressionless and didn't say a word. The king of the underworld didn't mind either. With a thought, the gray-dimensional world started to gradually collapse under the effects of the ritual. Meanwhile, the power of the black altar that was 3 levels tall under his feet became more and more vigorous. Far away in the void, Yan Nanlai, Dao Venerable Xian Wen, Kuang Heng, and the rest of the strong practitioners of the Taishu Temple all had extremely grim expressions. In the Xian Sea, Dao Venerable Tai Wen and the rest were facing the pressure of the dragon race's Xian Sea. They were already forced into a defensive state, and now that the king of the underworld was taking drastic measures, the situation was quickly heading towards collapse. No matter if the king of the underworld succeeded or if the dragon race succeeded, it would undoubtedly be a disaster for the Taishu temple and the current situation of the war between the two worlds. However, what made them helpless was that Yan Nanlai and the rest were also having trouble protecting themselves. Even though Lin Feng was fighting against Sun Mirage and Yudu, under the attacks of the other strong practitioners of Yudu, everyone in the Taishu temple was already surrounded by danger. Lin Feng looked at everyone in the Taishu temple whose magic power and aura were shaking unstably. Even though he didn't understand what was going on, he could feel that their consciousness had received a huge blow. He frowned and suddenly transmitted his voice to ask, "What's going on?" Yan Nanlai had narrowly avoided Jing Yan's attack and almost had his great void engraving shattered. After muttering to himself for a moment, he replied solemnly, "The king of the underworld suddenly bared his fangs and shook the Haotian mirror. The situation is dire. The king of the underworld has such an ability?" Lin Feng was slightly stunned when he heard what Yan Nanlai said. His mind turned, and he suddenly recalled how Xia Huang's evil soul had shaken Ding of Shenzhou back then in the Netherworld Sea. Before this, he already had his suspicions and suspected that the king of the underworld had other plans. Now that he connected all the clues together, he instantly understood the cause and effect of the matter. He really knows how to seize the opportunity. Lin Feng's gaze flickered, and his gaze swept across the battlefield where Yan Nanlai and the rest were. After pondering for a moment, he shook his head. He temporarily stopped controlling the primordial golden lamp and the fingers on his left hand gently moved in the air. He outlined a simple yet profound formation. Lin Feng stretched out his palm and directly stretched his hand into the formation. The void in the center of the formation rippled like water. Lin Feng silently said, "Little Lin, give me that ring." "Yes, master." Wang Lin's voice came from the formation. In the next instant, Lin Feng withdrew his palm from the formation, and a purple light spot appeared in his palm. It was something that looked like a ring, and its surface was engraved with complicated markings. Lin Feng examined the ring in detail and shook his head slowly. "If I can preserve it, I can study it in detail in the future. For now, I can only use it roughly. I hope it's not something that can only be used once." Because he was distracted, Sun Mirage Yuda's attacks became more and more urgent. As a result, the situation gradually became disadvantageous to Lin Feng. However, Lin Feng temporarily ignored the situation on his side. With a thought, the ring flew from his palm. Then, on the true spirit runes in the depths of Lin Feng's void return body, a purple glow that came from the same source as the ring appeared. The purple light landed on the ring, and it trembled slightly before transforming into a beam of flowing light and flying out. The ring didn't aim at Sun Mirage Yudu. Instead, it flew towards the battlefield far away. Its target was Hollow Plains Yudu, who was suppressing Dao Venerable Xian Yi and Taishu Temple. Hollow Plains Yudu had trapped Dao Venerable Xian Yi and Taishu Temple. If it wasn't to prevent Dao Venerable Xian Yi from using the Dharma-ending calamity to injure Jing Yan Yudu and the other Yudu beasts that hadn't completed their first calamity, his advantage would be even greater. Even so, Dao Venerable Xian Yi was already in a difficult situation. The power of the Yudu race was displayed to its fullest at this moment. But the instant the purple light appeared, all the strong practitioners of Yudu, including Kong Yuan and Yudu, were instantly stunned. They were astonished. The purple light transformed into a halo that was like a ring. It wrapped itself around one of Hollow Plains Yudu's claws. The action looked extremely ordinary, but the powerful Yudu beast couldn't dodge or resist it. It could only let the halo wrap itself around it. The three long horns on Hollow Plains Yudu's head burst forth with dazzling light, and the terrifying power of Yudu's ethereal splendor shook the void continuously. However, it was strange. After being wrapped by the small halo, the great demon of the Dharma-ending great demon, which was even stronger than the great sage and Kunlong king, instantly became dispirited. The demon power of its divine arts rapidly weakened. Sun Mirage Yudu was astonished when he saw this. A rare flash of anger appeared in his usually calm gaze. Heavenly Sea Emperor's Ring. Hollow Plains Yuda let out a heaven-shaking roar, but he couldn't stop his body from weakening. The ring that looked extremely ordinary in the past displayed astonishing power when facing the strong practitioners of Yudu. The white ethereal splendor of Yudu gradually dispersed, and Tao Venerable Xian Yi and Taishu Temple rushed out from within. However, before he could do anything, he heard a low growl. Unparalleled Yudu splendor. A terrifying beam of golden light shot straight over, and Tao Venerable Xian Yi hurriedly stopped in his tracks. He unleashed the Great Void mysterious light to reinforce the Great Void wonderland that Taishu Temple had transformed into, blocking the unparalleled Yudu splendor of Yudu from Green Crest Yudu. The Great Void wonderland that was like a kingdom of gods was pushed back continuously by the golden light, and the Great Void mysterious light dissipated. Even though the sudden change in the situation caught all the strong practitioners of Yudu off guard, Green Crest Yudu reacted extremely quickly. He immediately switched with Hollow Plains Yudu to fight with Tao Venerable Xian Yi. Without any communication, Jing Yan Yudu also abandoned Yan Nanlai and switched his attacks to the Supreme Void Yin Yang Great Formation. Meanwhile, the other two Yudu beasts that were in the First Tribulation period helped Jing Yan Yudu to hold Yan Nanlai back. The great demons of Yudu almost instantly stabilized the situation of the battle, minimizing the negative effects of Hollow Plains Yudu suddenly losing his battle power. However, the effects of Hollow Plains Yudu losing his battle power were quickly shown. Green Crest Yudu's abilities were no inferior to Hollow Plains Yudu's, and he still managed to force Tao Venerable Xian Yi back. However, Jing Yan Yudu and the other two great demons that were in the First Tribulation period found it hard to suppress the Supreme Void Yin Yang Great Formation and Yan Nanlai. Yan Nanlai's body flashed, and he transformed into a white cloud that entered the Supreme Void Yin Yang Great Formation. The moment he entered, he stared at Quang Heng and said, "Senior brother Quang, send me away from this battlefield. I will execute the curse of blood soul tranquility. We can't let the king of the underworld succeed." Chapter 12:26. Although Yan Nanlai had met up with Quang Heng and Lin Daohan, the situation was still disadvantageous to Taishu Temple. They could still hold on, but Tao Venerable Xian Wan was fighting against Green Crest and Yudu. The situation was clearly disadvantageous. However, at that moment, Yan Nanlai couldn't care less about strengthening the Supreme Void Yin Yang Formation or supporting Tao Venerable Xian Wan. The Haotian mirror had been shaken by the king of the underworld, causing the situation of Taishu Temple in the mysterious sea to almost collapse. They were forced to withdraw their defenses. Now that the king of the underworld was attacking, the situation of Tao Venerable Tai and the rest and the Haotian mirror in the mysterious sea would definitely worsen. Compared to White Cloud Mountain, the situation in the mysterious sea was more urgent and worse for Taishu Temple. Therefore, Yan Nanlai didn't need to say anything. Quang Heng, Lin Daohan, Tao Venerable Qing Ning, Fu Yunkong, and the rest already understood what he meant. Yan Nanlai wasn't someone who would flee in the face of battle, avoiding the important and focusing on the trivial. On the contrary, he was determined to rush to another battlefield and stop the Emperor of the Underworld's plan to seize the Clear Sky Mirror. The Blood Soul Tranquility Incantation originated from the primeval era's human demonic path's mystique, the Great Blood Soul Incantation. It was inspired by the demon race's cultivation method and was passed down through the bloodline. After being studied by the human race's demonic path powerhouses, they created a brutal magical art. The principle was to capture demons with lower cultivation and then use their blood and life as a sacrifice. With the help of many other methods, the curse would kill their direct relatives, who were of the same bloodline and had higher cultivation. This was a product of the struggle to survive in the Dark Age when the human race was still extremely weak in the primordial era. It was extremely bloody and cruel. When this spell first appeared, many strong practitioners of the demon race were caught off guard and killed by the curse. Even if they weren't killed on the spot, they would be heavily injured. After the strong practitioners of the demon race understood the divine art, they started to look for ways to break it. They used special incantations to defend themselves or used true spirit god marks to improve their bloodline and demon soul inheritance. Gradually, the Great Blood Soul Curse became ineffective. During the ancient era, this technique was modified by some people and became the blood-soul tranquility curse, which could be used on human cultivators. Later on, many experts of the human race broke it and the method to break it spread far and wide. Only then did the great blood-soul curse and blood-soul tranquility curse gradually decline. The Void Temple is currently the sect with the longest history in the vast divine continent. A portion of the spells that gradually disappeared in the long river of history still exist. Even though they are all in a dusty state, who knows when a certain spell might come in handy and have an unexpected effect. At this moment, Yan Nanlai shockingly wanted to use his own body as a sacrifice to curse the ancestor Yan Xinghe who had turned into an evil spirit. From there, he could resolve the crisis that the Void Temple was currently facing. If Yan Xinghe was still alive, this spell would be useless against him. But now that Yan Xinghe was an evil soul, Yan Nanlai had a chance. At this moment, it wasn't just the Taishu Temple that was strapped for strength. The entire human race of the Divine Prefecture was the same. It was extremely difficult to defeat the Emperor of the Underworld, who had suddenly attacked in a menacing manner. Yan Nanlai's current method was shockingly the most feasible solution. Quang Heng looked up at Yan Nanlai and remained silent. He did not say anything. At this moment, words were useless. He put his palms together and changed his incantation. Streams of mana fell into the Yin-Yang Supreme Void Formation. Dao Master Qing Ning, Fu Yunkong, and the others did the same. They did not say a word. Lin Daohan looked at Yan Nanlai. His gaze, which was usually as calm as water, finally showed some ripples. Yan Nanlai, on the other hand, was as calm as ever. He only nodded at him. Daohan, I can only leave this place to you. Stay calm and don't be affected by me. Lin Daohan nodded. Yes, Master. He also changed his incantation and sent streams of mana into the formation. The Yin-Yang Supreme Void Formation was activated. A resplendent light shot out from the center of the formation and flew into the distance. Outside the formation, Jing Yan Yudu raised his eyebrows. The three horns on his head shone with light, and divine markings appeared. It was like a raging inferno in the sky. A terrifying scarlet light rushed into the sky and hit the pillar of light shot out by the Yin-Yang Supreme Void Formation. It was Jing Yan Yudu's Yudu Huang Tianhua. The violent scarlet brilliance bombarded the light pillar in the center of the high void Yin-Yang formation and directly sliced it apart. The expressions of Quang Heng and the others didn't change. As they changed their incantation, the pillar of light rose again and pierced through the void. Yan Nanlai's body transformed into a white stream of light and rose rapidly along the pillar of light. He flew towards the end of the void. Jing Yan Yudu immediately shot out another beam of Yudu's brilliant light, and the dark void was dyed scarlet red. Countless flames exploded and burned furiously. Quang Heng and the others grunted, and their primordial spirits trembled. It was as though they could no longer maintain their human forms. However, the pillar of light in the center of the Yin-Yang Supreme Void Formation became extremely bright. It forcefully withstood the scarlet Yudu Huang Tianhua and sent Yan Nanlai away with the marvelous art of the void. Green Peak Yudu was enraged. Golden light markings filled the air, trying to stop Yan Nanlai's footsteps. However, Dao Lord Xian Yi, who was on the other side, had a solemn expression. He put his palms together, and white halos of light spread out from his body like ripples. Rings of light stacked together, and their power increased rapidly. They expanded continuously as they counterattacked Green Crest Yudu. At the same time, as they flew, they closed in on Jing Yan Yudu and the other two strong practitioners of Yudu who were at the beginning of the calamity. Green Crest Yudu gave a cold snort, and the golden light transformed into a screen of light to block Dao Venerable Xian Yi and the Taishu Temple once again. The three horns on the top of his head shone continuously, and one of them shot out a beam of golden light that chased after Yan Nanlai who had been sent away by the Yin-Yang Supreme Void Formation. Yan Nanlai was helpless. The Great Void inscription on his left hand flashed with a mysterious glow, and he unfurled the Great Void mysterious light to protect himself. However, when he was struck by the golden light, his entire body trembled violently. The great void engraving on the back of his hand clearly showed many cracks. Yen Nanlai's entire body seemed to be emitting a hazy rain of light. It was as if countless pores on his body had been shaken to the point where blood was oozing out. However, Yen Nanlai resisted the pressure and didn't stop. He broke open the void realm and instantly left. Among the Yudu beasts that were watching the battle from afar, one of them grinned. "Where do you think you're going?" After saying that, it transformed into a beam of light and chased after Yen Nanlai. Beside him, a tall and big Yudu beast frowned slightly. "Ning Feng, even though he's severely injured, it won't be easy for you to kill him." Green Crest Yudu said coldly, "That person used the power of the formation to escape through the void. Even if Ning Feng can win, he won't be able to catch up to him. Zhan Ming, bring Wan Kong and go with Ning Feng to kill that person." Even though they didn't know why Yen Nanlai was risking his life to break out of the encirclement, it was a very simple logic to stop what the enemy wanted to do. At that moment, the battle was still under the control of the Yudu race, so they weren't afraid of splitting up. The Yudu great demons that were on the union of Star and Soul didn't participate in the battle earlier because they were ready to chase after the cultivators of Taishu Temple who were escaping. A Yudu beast that was attacking the great formation of Yin Yang Void with Jing Yen Yudu nodded its head when it heard Green Crest Yudu's order. With a flash, it chased in the direction that Yen Nanlai and Ning Feng Yudu had disappeared to. The tall and big Yudu beast that had advised Ning Feng Yudu earlier also followed closely behind, vanishing into the void. Quang Heng and the rest executed the great formation of Yin Yang Void, wanting to stop Zhan Ming and the other two, but Jing Yen Yudu immediately struck down with a violent Yudu brilliance. Another strong practitioner of Yudu who was at the beginning of the tribulation also attacked. Green Crest Yudu looked coldly at Jade Capital Mountain that was shrouded in jade-like auspicious clouds and let out an angry roar. He then turned around and continued to pounce at Dao Venerable Xian 1. He raised a claw and raised a golden ball of air to strike at Dao Venerable Xian and Taishu Temple. As the golden ball of air spun continuously, it was like a golden black hole that attracted Dao Venerable Xian 1 and Taishu Temple to lose their footing. It was as though they were about to be sucked into the abyss of the ball of air. Kong Yuan Yudu's face was also black as he stared in the direction of Jade Capital Mountain. He retreated and temporarily retreated from the battle. He no longer revealed his true form, but the purple ring was still firmly on his finger, suppressing and restricting his power. Mirage Sun Yudu's gaze calmed down instead. Due to Lin Feng being distracted, he was starting to gain the upper hand. His violent demon power pressed down on the Heaven Punishment Sword formation and Jade Capital Mountain like an avalanche. At that moment, far away in the void, a ray of light flashed by. When the light dissipated, Yen Nanlai's figure was revealed. He felt his primordial spirit distort, and he couldn't calm it down for a long time. What made Yen Nanlai's heart sink was that he could faintly feel strong practitioners of Yudu race chasing after him from behind. He calmed himself down, and as he traveled through space, the spell in his hands changed. He had already started to execute the curse of blood soul calming. A ray of light shot out from Yen Nanlai's forehead and landed in front of him. The faint golden light gradually condensed and formed a drop of golden crystal that looked like a water droplet. As he executed the spell, the golden water droplet gradually changed. Its color turned from pure gold to dark red, and it gradually turned into the appearance of fresh blood. A strange rune appeared in the blood droplet, and it gave off a mysterious yet fiendish energy wave. Yen Nanlai tapped his finger gently, and the blood droplet flew into the air. After pausing slightly in the void, it suddenly flashed and flew in a direction. Still some distance away. There was a limit to the range of the curse of blood soul calming, and there were also many other restrictions. At that moment, Yen Nanlai hurried in the direction where the king of the underworld and Yen Xinghe were under the guidance of the ritual. He passed through the divine land, and his thoughts moved slightly. Previously, the Great Zhou Empire and the Great Qin Empire had used the qi of the dragon vein to augment the Great Void Nine Heavens Imperial Court of my monastery. However, when the Great Void Nine Heavens Imperial Court was broken by Yudu, under the influence of the Qi of the dragon vein of Great Zhou and Great Qin gathered in their respective places. Tianjing City and West Tomb City will definitely suffer a severe backlash. Great Zhou has the Grand Imperial Palace and the Great Will of Heavens, so they should still be able to resist. However, there was news that Great Qin had already lost Immortal Dragon City. Chapter 12:27. Yan Nanlai looked into the distance, only to see that West Hill City was still standing on the Divine Land. Oh. Why is that? Yan Nanlai was a little surprised. How could the Great Qin dynasty withstand the backlash just now after losing the Immortal Dragon City? The entire Great Qin dynasty was equally worried about this point, and felt a sense of despair. The new emperor of the Great Qin dynasty, Shi Zongtang, had already mentally prepared himself to become the shortest emperor in the history of the Great Qin dynasty. At this moment, the Great Qin dynasty cultivators in West Hill City also had a gloomy expression, but under the leadership of Shi Zongtang, they activated the power of the protective formation of West Hill City to the extreme. The huge city, at this moment, was covered by incomparably complicated formation patterns. Every street in West Hill City lit up, like ribbons of light, together outlining a huge formation. Many markets and buildings in the city also lit up, forming small formation patterns one after another, and then merged with the huge formation. Tens of thousands of rays of light shot into the sky, and gradually, light patterns began to appear on the towering and long city walls of West Hill City. The entire West Hill City had turned into a huge formation, and at the core of the formation, the Great Qin Imperial Palace, the five-colored light dragon formed by the Qi of the dragon vein was constantly soaring. The new emperor of the Great Qin dynasty, Shi Zongtang, had a solemn expression. While maintaining the formation, he waved his hand, and a talisman flew into the air, shining brightly, and soon turned into a door of light, from which a large amount of red light was emitted. This door of light led to the most core secret realm controlled by the Great Qin dynasty, the ancient Sky Dragon domain. Red light flashed in the door of light. Looking through the door of light, the scenery inside was strange and dazzling, and the sky was astonishingly dark red. Black, white, yellow, red, and green light constantly circulated within, causing the entire ancient Sky Dragon domain to roar. Shi Zongtang's hand seals changed together, and under the activation of magic power, a large amount of invisible power fiercely surged out from the ancient Sky Dragon domain, and together supported the formation of West Hill City. With the Imperial Palace as the center, the power of the protective formation of West Hill City grew stronger and stronger. However, the Qin Empire's new Emperor Shi Zongtang and the Great Qin Empire's experts in the palace were unable to relax because of this. Feeling the immense pressure from the dragon vein, everyone felt bitter in their hearts. Their expressions were grave. What they were doing now was just doing their best and leaving it to fate. The instant the violent energy came into contact, it instantly caused the entire Western Tomb City to tremble incessantly. At this moment, the enormous and majestic city was like a pile of sand that was on the verge of collapse. The flashing runes on the city walls continuously shattered. Streaks of light fell down like thousands of fragments falling to the ground. The entire city seemed to tremble. In the huge ancient city, the strips of light on the streets twisted together, and cracks that were clearly visible to the naked eye appeared. The buildings in Western Tomb City also began to shake, as if they were experiencing an earthquake. Those buildings protected by array runes withstood the initial pressure, protecting the other ordinary buildings in Western Tomb City. However, the other party's immense strength was like Mount Tai crushing down on an egg at this moment. One building after another rapidly shattered and turned to dust. After the building protected by the array runes was the first to shatter, the other buildings also began to shatter one after another. In this city, there was no lack of temporary footholds that other major forces had stationed in Western Tomb City in the past, or other residences and courtyards, but at this moment, they were all shattered and turned into ruins. As the formation runes on the streets and the various buildings shattered, even the protective formation of the entire Western Tomb City, at this moment, became more and more fragile, and the brilliance of the formation gradually dimmed. At the center of the formation, the Great Qin Imperial Palace was also constantly shaking at this moment. The once dignified and magnificent palaces and pavilions, at this moment, had become extremely fragile, like thatched huts that could be overturned at any time under a storm. For the great Qin Empire, this was one of the few dangerous and desperate situations they had faced in the tens of thousands of years of history since their founding. The majestic power transmitted through the dragon vein qi suppressed the entire sky above Western Tomb City, and through the flow of qi, began to spread towards the ancient sky dragon domain. The violent destructive power swept across the entire ancient sky dragon domain, sweeping across the foreign domain, and stirring up the inside of it into a mess. The red light from the light gate was constantly fluctuating, flashing rapidly, while the great Qin imperial palace was also in a state of being shaken by the wind and rain. Not only was a large number of buildings in Western Tomb City turned into nothingness, but there were also buildings in the imperial palace that were shattered and exploded. The beautiful scenery of the past, at this moment, was like a portrait, and then violently torn apart. The great Qin imperial palace cultivators who were supporting the formation in the imperial palace were trembling incessantly. It was not fear, but a sign of being overwhelmed. Their bodies were like porcelain, about to shatter under the heavy pressure. Shi Zongtang's face was livid. Liang Pan, good move. Although he did not have the immortal dragon city at hand, but through the connection of the dragon vein qi, Shi Zongtang could vaguely feel that there seemed to be some unusual movements in the Grand Imperial Palace, causing the counterforce to attack Tianjing City and Western Tomb City to be not completely equal. Vaguely, he felt that Western Tomb City seemed to be under greater pressure. But Shi Zongtang could do nothing about it. Under the pressure of the majestic force, even he, who was at the Dao integration stage, felt his Yuan spirit becoming unstable, as if he could not maintain a human form. After the imperial palace, which was the core of the Western Tomb City's formation, began to shake, the entire formation began to be on the verge of breaking. In addition to the collapse of the buildings in the city, even the streets and ground began to undulate and shatter, with ravines appearing and crisscrossing. In the sky above the city and the formation, the flowing clouds dispersed, the sun dimmed, and the sky seemed to be shrouded in a layer of haze. In the space, huge cracks also appeared, instantly covering the entire sky, and shrouding the sky above Western Tomb City. At this moment, the world around Western Tomb City was like a beautiful porcelain that had been smashed by someone, covered with fine cracks, and the scenery of the world was shattering. At this moment, the void in the south completely shattered, and a figure stepped into the domain that seemed to be on the verge of destruction. The figure was tall and handsome. It was Shi Tianhao. At this moment, he looked at the terrifying scenery in front of him, and his expression was very solemn. A little late, but we really encountered danger. Behind him, there was a giant beast standing on its hind legs. It had the head of a tiger, the body of an ape, and its eyes were like the sun and the moon. It was great sage Lu Yuan. He shook his head repeatedly. Don't go any closer. With our strength, even if we go in, we will only be crushed together. He had been subdued by Lin Feng and worked hard for Xianmen Tianzong. In recent years, he had gradually lost his ferocity and arrogance. Previously, when he followed Shi Tianhao to infinite wilderness vast land, he had listened to his orders and even killed some demons. However, if he was asked to voluntarily die for Xianmen Tianzong or for others, great sage Lu Yuan would definitely not do it. Shi Tianhao did not have the time to argue with him at this moment, and immediately said, "You stay here, I will go in alone." With that, he continued to walk forward. Great sage Lu Yuan was shocked and cursed in a low voice, "Kid, are you crazy? Are you going to die with the people in that city? Even if the Yudu race is wary of your master, they might not know that you are here. Even if they do, the power will be hard to stop. If you go now, you will just be sending yourself to death." Great sage Lu Yuan had a notorious reputation in infinite wilderness vast land. He challenged and provoked other strong practitioners of the demon race and was called a lunatic by many people. However, great sage Lu Yuan was not truly crazy. Instead, he used this method to raise his strength through battle, imitating the monkey of the past. Although he had experienced many dangerous battles, great sage Lu Yuan would never go into a situation where he would definitely die. He stared at Shi Tianhao. Aren't you still unable to control that thing? Great sage Lu Yuan suddenly remembered that they had entered deep into infinite wilderness vast land, and on their way back, they had suddenly fallen into a maze. It wasn't a maze that had formed naturally, but it wasn't man-made either. It was a special situation that had formed by chance. In the history of heaven primordial great world, it had once been brilliant, but it had fallen like a shooting star. When Shi Tianhao, Zhuge Zhan, great sage Lu Yuan, and the rest broke through the maze and saw the truth, even the knowledgeable great sage Lu Yuan and Zhuge Zhan were astonished. Great sage Lu Yuan knew that Shi Tianhao had dared to come to West Tomb City because he wanted to rely on the gains he had gotten in the maze. However, he also knew that Shi Tianhao had no way to use the power of that thing freely. In the end, it would be all for naught. Getting close to West Tomb City under such circumstances was no different from risking one's life, dancing on the tip of a knife. This put great sage Lu Yuan in a difficult position. He didn't care if Shi Tianhao died, but if Lin Feng were to get angry because of this, great sage Lu Yuan had no choice but to care. Shi Tianhao no longer cared about great sage Lu Yuan. He stepped through the void, his body flashing with a dazzling light. A terrifying blood energy spread out from his body, making him seem like a human-shaped fortress. He walked through the shattered void, step by step, towards West Tomb City. Although his expression was solemn, his eyes were calm and serene. He had always been a lawless and unrestrained person, but at this moment, he was extremely solemn and confident. As Shi Tianhao walked forward, he slowly recited, Immortal. Void. Instrument. Shu'a. Celestial. June. Heavens. Zhu. Chaos. Wholeness. Subjugation. These 12 words leapt out from Shi Tianhao's mouth. As each word was recited, the world seemed to tremble. As each word was recited, a giant ball of light would appear above Shi Tianhao's head. As the 12 profound syllables were recited, 12 balls of light would appear above Shi Tianhao's head. Within each ball of light, there was a giant shining rune that corresponded to the 12 words that Shi Tianhao had spoken. As Shi Tianhao walked forwards, these balls of light gradually changed in appearance. Within the light, there seemed to be figures standing tall. As the 12 balls of light stood there, they were like 12 giant gods that had descended to the mortal world. Chapter 12:28. Shi Tianhao's footsteps became extremely heavy, as if every step forward became extremely difficult. As he moved forward, the 12 giant silhouettes above his head also moved forward, following Shi Tianhao towards West Hill City. A huge circle of light, with the 12 giant silhouettes as the center, kept expanding in all directions. Hundreds of millions of runes and talismans also started to spread between heaven and earth. With Shi Tianhao and the giant silhouettes as the center, the concept of power that suppressed the heavens and the earth expanded in all directions. This concept of power collided with the terrifying destructive power that was destroying West Hill City, instantly creating a huge impact. Shi Tianhao's footsteps suddenly became even slower. At this moment, the pressure on West Hill City was slightly relieved. Shi Zongtang and the others could barely split some of their attention to observe the sudden changes in the surroundings. When the cultivators of Great Qin found out that the reinforcement was only Shi Tianhao, they couldn't help but be extremely shocked. Although they were the ones who invited Shi Tianhao to take charge, and although they knew that Shi Tianhao's strength couldn't be measured by ordinary primordial spirit cultivators, they still invited Shi Tianhao out of etiquette and symbolic meaning. After all, although Shi Tianhao displayed extremely powerful strength, facing the current crisis, it was still beyond his power. If he really came to West Hill City, he would just be buried together with West Hill City. Previously, when they contacted Xianmen Tianzong, the Great Qin dynasty naturally hoped that Zhu Yi could bring the Golden Bridge of Permitha to help. Only with the existence of the creation treasure, the Golden Bridge of Permitha, could it help the people of Great Qin dynasty to survive this catastrophe and avoid destruction. However, Zhu Yi and Tian Gang Sword Venerable were guarding the southern wasteland together, confronting Shenlong Wang. Everyone in the Great Qin dynasty was well aware of this situation. They knew that Zhu Yi indeed couldn't split himself, that was why they had given up all hope. But now that Shi Tianhao resolutely came, the new Emperor Shi Zongtang and the experts of Great Qin were very grateful, but also very surprised. Everyone else used their energy to support the formation, and only Shi Zongtang, who had the highest cultivation, could spare some energy to pay attention to Shi Tianhao. After carefully analyzing, Shi Zongtang couldn't help but be even more surprised. In the depths of his memory, a vague and indistinct legend gradually surfaced in Shi Zongtang's mind. In the ancient era, the Gate of Heaven rose, and the master of Gate of Heaven, Heaven Emperor Kong, was taken care of by his neighbors, and grew up eating food. After he became an adult and learned Tao, he became the pride of his birthplace, and was revered by the people of Tianyu City. Celestial Emperor Kong had always been sentimental about it. Later on, there was a saying that when a man attained the Tao, his chickens and dogs would ascend to the heavens. After attaining the Tao, he used a great divine ability to uproot his hometown, Celestial Yu City, into the 9 heavens. He guided the spirit spring, laid out the spirit fields, and raised the people above the 9 heavens. Under Celestial Emperor Kong's continuous magic power, the huge city stayed in the sky for a long time, and history called it the City of the Sky. The Sky City became Celestial Emperor Kong's initial foundation. After that, Celestial Emperor Kong found a blessed land and established his mountain gate. The Sky City then hung above the mountain gate and was nourished by the mountain gate's spirit energy. There was no longer a need for Celestial Emperor Kong to lift it up. The Sky City was still a city that didn't fall. Under Celestial Emperor Kong's method, it was hidden in the void. When the commoners in the city wanted to leave the city and return to the divine continent, they could also use the formation to travel. It was very convenient. With the magical powers of Heavenly Emperor Kong and the many experts of the Heavenly Gate, as well as the spiritual energy of the great formation of the Heavenly Gate, as well as the refinement of a large number of precious resources, the Sky City gradually changed from a grand city of mortals to an existence similar to the Heavenly Palace of the 9 heavens. Most of the families of the disciples of the Heavenly Gate also moved there. Over the years, the city in the sky had gradually formed a connection with the Heavenly Gate's mountain guarding formation, the Azure Sky All Heavens formation. They could be separated or combined. Together, they formed one of the most powerful fortresses in the history of the Divine Land. In fact, even though it wasn't as free as it was in Xianmen Tianzong's Yujing Mountain, under certain conditions, it could still move the void at a fixed point. However, in the war between the two worlds, when the ancient era entered the medieval era, with the complete destruction of the Heavenly Gate, the city in the sky and the Azure Sky All Heavens formation had also fallen. However, at this moment, when Shi Zongtang looked at the 12 giant silhouettes above Shi Tianhao's head, he couldn't help but be stunned. Those are, the 12 heavenly generals of the ancient Heavenly Gate's Azure Sky All Heavens formation. The ancient Heavenly Gate believed that all techniques belonged to the same origin, and they were inclusive. They collected and studied a large amount of knowledge, analyzed and referenced the various principles and techniques that existed in the entire Tianyuan Great World. Regardless of whether it was the human race or the demon race, they would seriously study and comprehend everything. Then, they would combine it with their own orthodoxy to bring forth new ideas from the old and constantly improve and compile them. It was rumored that Heavenly Emperor Kong had once obtained the incomplete map of the demon race's top formation, the 12 Sacred Heavens formation. Using it as a foundation, he improved it into a formation that could be activated by the human race. In the end, he formed his own strongest formation, the Azure Sky All Heavens formation. This formation refined the spiritual bodies of the 12 heavenly generals, gathered the Taos of the heavens, and turned it into a formation that suppressed the heaven and earth. Later on, the Azure Sky All Heavens formation linked with the city in the sky, and when the formation and the celestial city became one, the Heavenly Gate powerhouses could use it to switch between the city and the spiritual bodies of the 12 heavenly generals. Because of the Great Zhou Empire and the Eastern Heavenly Gate, the Great Qin Empire also did their best to understand the ancient Heavenly Gate. This information was all recorded in ancient books. Although it was limited, at this moment, looking at the 12 giant silhouettes above Shi Tianhao's head and sensing the Taos and concepts within them, Shi Zongtang could still see some clues. In particular, Shi Zongtang could sense that the spiritual bodies of the 12 heavenly generals above Shi Tianhao's head weren't complete. They revealed a feeling of weakness and dilapidation, as if they had suffered heavy injuries and appeared broken. It wasn't a formation that was reconstructed from the azure sky all heavens formation. Is this the original formation from the ancient heavenly gate back then? Shi Zongtang thought to himself, although it was destroyed by Jihuang Xinyuan back then, did it luckily leave behind a remnant? Rumor has it that during the battle back then, the boundaries between the desolate ancient star ocean and the great thousand world underwent a drastic change. The star ocean passageway also shattered into 6 star ocean gates, and the situation was extremely chaotic. If that's the case, the city in the sky that merged with the azure sky all heavens formation back then, although it was also destroyed, did it also survive? Shi Zongtang thought to himself, but he saw the light silhouettes of the 12 heavenly generals above Shi Tianhao's head suddenly start to blur, as if they were going to disappear at any time. Shi Tianhao frowned and activated his mind and dermic powers, and the light silhouettes above his head became clear again. However, this scene immediately made Shi Zongtang's heart, which had been gradually calming down, immediately tensed up again. Clearly, Shi Tianhao couldn't freely control the power of the 12 heavenly generals above his head, and he was in an unstable state. This state was undoubtedly very dangerous. He might not be able to save West Hill City at any time, and he might even lose his life. However, Shi Tianhao didn't retreat. He strode forward with his head held high, moving forward in the world that seemed like it would shatter at any time. The 12 heavenly generals above his head flickered in and out of existence. When the giant light silhouettes appeared, the pressure on West Hill City eased, and Shi Tianhao himself also felt much more relaxed. However, when the light silhouettes gradually disappeared, not only did the pressure on West Hill City increase, but Shi Tianhao also seemed to be in the middle of a storm. Even with his powerful body that had been tempered hundreds and thousands of times, he still felt immense pressure, as if he was about to be torn apart. Following the chi of the dragon vein, the powerful force that was pulled back by the chi of the dragon vein was fierce and violent, but it actually didn't last for long. However, this short period of time was incomparably long for the people of the Great Qin dynasty and Shi Tianhao. Every moment, felt like thousands of years. The 12 heavenly generals above Shi Tianhao's head were not stable, and also constantly fluctuated, appearing and disappearing. The moment each of the 12 heavenly generals' spirit bodies disappeared, it was as if Shi Tianhao had suffered a heavy blow. His gaze dimmed slightly, and it was clear that the damage to his principal spirit was worsening. Blood even gradually seeped out of the corner of his mouth. In the Great Qin dynasty's imperial palace, the principal spirits of the cultivators with slightly weaker cultivations were gradually collapsing under the repeated attacks. Some Void Return Realm experts had already manifested their Void Return Dharma bodies, but at that moment, their Void Return Dharma bodies were like fragile porcelain, gradually shattering. In reality, Shi Zongtang, who was at the Dao Integration Realm, was suffering the greatest pressure from the Great Qin dynasty's imperial palace. At that moment, his principal spirit was almost losing its human form. He sighed and wanted to tell Shi Tianhao to retreat, but he couldn't even send a voice transmission using his dermic power, nor could he use his spiritual sense to investigate. The entire West Hill City started to collapse, and the buildings and roads in the city were almost completely destroyed. Even the tall and majestic city walls that were like continuous mountains started to gradually shatter. Huge cracks kept spreading on the city walls like ferocious dragons. Shi Tianhao felt as if there was a heavy burden on his body, causing all the bones, blood vessels, and acupoints in his body to wail. Now, he could be said to have experienced hundreds of battles. He had fought bloody battles with his enemies, and he had even experienced many serious injuries. However, it was rare for him to face an opponent who was much stronger than him like he did today. However, Shi Tianhao was not afraid at all. Instead, he revealed a serious expression. There was some skill before, but it was like a flash of lightning, and it was difficult to capture that inspiration. The spiritual bodies of the 12 divine generals and the real sky city seemed to have reached a wonderful balance. If I want to control it freely, I need to balance the strength of my body, chi, and blood with the strength of my primordial spirit. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but I need to comprehend the truth and changes. There are thousands of great Daos in the world, and they are indeed wonderful beyond words. The mysteries of the transformation between the spiritual bodies of the 12 divine generals and the Sky City are similar to the principles that I have been trying to figure out these days. Although it was not the end of the world, a faint smile appeared on Shi Tianhao's face. As he walked, his figure also started to change. Sometimes, it was his physical body, and the power of his blood surged majestically. Sometimes, it turned into the appearance of the primordial Tai Chi diagram, appearing in the void, covering the sky and earth, and slowly rotating. Chapter 12:29. The primordial Tai Chi diagram that Shi Tianhao had transformed into exuded a desolate aura. In the void, there were a large number of demon race figures led by the Chaos, Suani, Tao Tai, and Xiongqi, the 4 ancient beasts, constantly floating up and down. There was an ancient aura that was desolate and ancient. Everything was silent and there was no aura of life. It was like the most primitive universe before the chaos was created. Although a group of demon race figures were floating up and down, roaring and galloping in it, the most profound meaning was that it was a lifeless desolation and primitive. When Shi Tianhao returned to his human form and his primordial spirit returned to his body, the majestic and exuberant qi and blood in his body showed abundant vitality and exuberant vitality. Shi Tianhao was constantly trying to figure out the spiritual bodies of the 12 divine generals above his head while comprehending his own Tao, skills, and magical powers. In fact, since he broke through the maze and collected the remains of the Sky City, he had been carefully trying to figure out the principles and concepts within. Although it was broken, resulting in a great loss of power, the power and concepts within it still made Shi Tianhao raise his eyebrows. After meeting up with Zhu Yi, the 2 brothers studied it together, and Zhu Yi was also full of praise. In the process, Shi Tianhao found that not only was he trying to figure out the power and concepts of the remains of the Sky City, but as he continued to nourish it, the Sky City seemed to be gradually recovering. Since the destruction of the prehistoric times until now, the remains of the city in the sky, which had merged with the spirits of the 12 immortal generals, had been drifting in the void, forming a maze. At the same time, it was also slowly gathering spiritual energy to repair itself. Although the process was slow, it did not stop for a moment. Occasionally, it would return to the vast 1,000 domains and turn into a maze. After staying for a period of time, it would leave the vast 1,000 domains and hide in the void. In these long years, the Sky City slowly recovered its vitality. Now, with the efforts of Shi Tianhao, it had awakened from its dormant self-repair. Although it was still far from its peak in the past, and many of the damages could not be repaired by self-repair, the power of the Sky City at the moment had become not to be underestimated. However, Shi Tianhao still needed to carefully comprehend the principles behind it in order to control its power freely and activate the Sky Castle to reappear in the world. And in the process of comprehending the concept, Shi Tianhao was also using the Tao Te Ching as a foundation, constantly verifying what he had learned in his lifetime. His figure, in a short period of time, changed between his origin soul and his physical body. The pressure that he and West Tomb City shared was incomparably wild. Whether it was West Hill City or Shi Tianhao, at this moment, they were like a small boat in a stormy sea, as if the next monstrous wave would immediately sink them. Looking at the West Hill City in front of him, Shi Tianhao suddenly roared to the sky. He took on a human form and his primordial spirit fused with his body. His powerful and vigorous blood energy became more and more majestic. The acupoints all over his body vibrated, like the stars in the universe twinkling at the same time, or even annihilating them, forming a terrifying explosive force. But with a thought from Shi Tianhao, his body was accompanied by the majestic blood energy. The vigorous vitality and vigorous qi were like the opening of the universe and the power of the multiplication of all living beings. Suddenly, it dimmed. What replaced it was Shi Tianhao operating the desolate character formula of the black and yellow forward formula. A desolate, destructive, chaotic, and ignorant concept of power emerged. A desolate aura covered Shi Tianhao's body, causing his body to seem to transform into the primordial state of the universe before the creation of the world. Everything was chaotic, ignorant, formless, and intangible. But in the center of this desolate primordial world, there seemed to be an extremely powerful existence. It was as if it was placed in an eggshell and was constantly being nurtured. When it matured, it would break out of the shell and give birth to all living things. And the next moment, Shi Tianhao's body suddenly changed. He opened the primordial spirit incarnation of the primordial Tai Chi diagram and put away his body. On the primordial Tai Chi diagram, a primordial aura drifted out, like the primordial universe. But soon, the power of the Tai Chi diagram began to change. The desolate aura gradually dissipated, and a vigorous and powerful vitality emerged from it. It was as if the desolate universe was instantly transformed into a world full of life. All living things grew, multiplied, and strengthened. The many demon clan light shadows floating on the Tai Chi diagram suddenly seemed to be filled with vitality at this moment. They became more active, more ferocious, and more violent. However, under this world full of vitality, there seemed to be a desolate chaos. It was difficult for others to detect, but it was like the starting point and origin of all living things. I turned my primordial spirit into Yin Yuan, and refined my body into Desolate God. With Yin Yuan and Desolate God, I can create and oppose each other to achieve a balance. They are connected and unified, but also completely opposite. Shi Tianhao suddenly let out a long roar. His figure flashed in the void, and at the same time, his physical body and the Tai Chi diagram formed by his primordial spirit appeared at the same time. They faced each other from a distance, and then gradually merged again. The black and white Tai Chi diagram kept spinning in the void, deducing the two opposing but connected concepts. Under the comprehensive study, Shi Tianhao felt that his understanding of Tao and divine ability concepts had reached a new height. And the spiritual bodies of the 12 heavenly divine generals, which he had been unable to control before, seemed to be completely open to him at this moment, and the connection was getting closer and closer. Immortal void instrument, all chaos in the heavens. As Shi Tianhao let out a long roar again, the 12 giant light shadows above his head became clearer, and they began to become lifelike. The 12 giants were all clad in armor, holding long halberds in their hands. They stood between the heavens and the earth, and their originally chaotic faces suddenly lit up. It was as if a person in a deep sleep had opened his eyes, and his gaze swept across the world. Although he had been seriously injured, he still displayed a powerful might at this moment. Hiding outside the storm, great sage Lu Yuan could not help but be dumbfounded when he saw this scene. Did he succeed by chance, or can he really control this power freely? Although he gradually felt that Shi Tianhao's current strength was already above his, and he was no longer the same as when they first met in Tianhuang mainland, great sage Lu Yuan was still shocked at this moment. He could vaguely feel that Shi Tianhao's body seemed to have undergone a miraculous change. At this moment, the activation of the spiritual bodies of the 12 heavenly divine generals was not a coincidence, but a complete and natural fusion that came from a thorough understanding. Great sage Lu Yuan suddenly remembered that when Shi Tianhao had just collected the remains of Sky Castle and reported it to Lin Feng had only given him a simple reply, and asked him to carefully analyze it. In other words, the things belonged to Shi Tianhao, and Lin Feng would not take the initiative to interfere. To other forces, even if it was a remnant, such a powerful and important existence like Sky Castle was also a supreme treasure that was of great importance. Although Shi Tianhao's divine powers and dermic powers were astonishing and far exceeded ordinary essence soul realm cultivators, his cultivation level was still low, and he had only cultivated for a short period of time. It was unimaginable for any other force, even Taishu Temple, to let him keep the remains of Sky Castle and have full control over it. However, whether it was Lin Feng or Shi Tianhao, they did not seem to care about this. As far as great sage Lu Yuan knew, similar situations were not rare. Many years ago, after Lin Feng's other disciple, Zhu Yi, obtained the creation Dharma treasure embryo of Yingzhou Immortal Mountain, Lin Feng did not take it back to the sect, and instead left it to Zhu Yi to deal with, which stunned the entire Great Heaven Yuan world. However, after that, during the battle to destroy the Xian world, Zhu Yi used his essence soul as an opportunity to refine the Permitha Golden Bridge, and from then on, he dominated the heavens. In the battle against the dragon clan not long ago, he shone brilliantly, and his name shook the divine land and infinite region. And now, the same situation had happened to Lin Feng's other disciple, Shi Tianhao, as if it was a sign of the rise of another legend, which made great sage Lu Yuan sigh in his heart. It was because of Lin Feng's magnanimity, Zhu Yi, Shi Tianhao, and the others' shocking talents. Xianmen Tianzong, which was getting stronger and stronger, began to show more and more dazzling brilliance. Because of the sudden changes on Shi Tianhao's side, the pressure on the new Great Qin Emperor Shi Zongtang in West Hill City was slightly relieved, which allowed him to divide his divine sense to pay attention to Shi Tianhao's movements. Then, he was shocked to find that the spiritual bodies of the 12 heavenly generals above Shi Tianhao's head had actually stabilized. Shi Tianhao's loud shout resounded between heaven and earth, order. Amidst the shout, the 12 giant light shadows shook at the same time, making a silent cry toward the void above their heads, but it shook the heavens. Under the urging of Shi Tianhao, a large number of talismans and formation patterns appeared around the 12 giant light shadows, together forming a huge magic formation. Although the magic formation seemed broken and incomplete, it still exuded a powerful aura. Under the shroud of the magic formation, the world and the void gradually turned into a dark green, and the dark green halo covered the spiritual bodies of the 12 heavenly generals together. Bright streams of light constantly flashed in the dark green halo like endless auspicious clouds, flowing horizontally and vertically. The next moment, the dark green auspicious clouds suddenly shook. The clouds gradually dispersed, and a huge shadow rose from the auspicious clouds, revealing itself under the auspicious clouds. That was a majestic city that didn't look as big as West Hill City, but it was even more shocking. Looking carefully, the city walls were in ruins, with only broken walls left. Large sections of the city walls had collapsed, and even the 2 corners of the city had been completely destroyed, leaving only wreckage. But this city, under the protection of the dark green auspicious clouds, was still like an immortal city in the heavens, far superior to any mortal city in the mortal world. In the city, one could vaguely see the light shadows of tens of thousands of living beings, bustling with activity. It seemed illusory, but it was a different kind of power and will. After a long period of time, it had always been added to this immortal city. It was the city in the sky. Shi Tianhao and the city in the sky fused together, constantly moving forward, gradually arriving above West Hill City. At this moment, the power of the 2 majestic cities faintly resonated at this moment, resisting the violent backlash from the Qi meridians. The pressure was still great. Although the city in the sky was strong, it was still seriously damaged, and its vitality was injured. At this moment, it joined forces with West Hill City, and the 2 cities were still violently shaking together. Although it wasn't as dangerous as before, the situation was still not optimistic. And in this process, the power of West Hill City and the power of the city in the sky gradually fused together, complementing each other and giving birth to new changes. Chapter 1230. Above West Hill City, the 5-colored light dragon circled between heaven and earth, gradually merging with the Sky City in the void. Shi Tianhao used his Tao to communicate with Sky City, continuously comprehending and verifying the principles within. Gradually, new changes began to take place in the Sky City. The huge city that was protected by the dark green clouds began to shine brilliantly. It was not that the city walls were covered in light, or that the walls were shining from the inside out. Instead, the entire city started to turn into light. The sturdy walls seemed to gradually turn into flowing light, turning from corporeal to spiritual. In the blink of an eye, the entire Sky City had turned into a city made entirely of light, towering above the clouds. The new emperor of Qin, Shi Zongtang, was slightly surprised when he saw this. Shi Tianhao can already predict Sky City's changes to such an extent? But Shi Zongtang's heart sank. Sky City's current state is clearly not as good for defense as before. His judgment was not wrong. Although they were still enduring the immense pressure transmitted through the Qi meridians, the assistance from the remains of Sky City had clearly weakened. The pressure on Shi Tianhao and the Great Qin dynasty's cultivators had clearly increased. West Hill City, which had already been unable to bear the burden, once again felt like it was going to collapse. Shi Zongtang and the other experts of the Great Qin Empire felt rather complicated. Seeing hope in a moment of despair, seeing that they could escape danger, but hope gradually disappeared. The feeling of losing something after gaining it was often more disappointing than not having it at all. The immense destructive power transmitted through the Qi meridians was violent but did not last for long. Now, it was gradually coming to an end. As long as they could safely endure it, the people of West Hill City and the Great Qin dynasty could successfully escape. At this moment, if Shi Zongtang and the others wanted to escape, it was not impossible. However, even if they could escape, other than Shi Zongtang, who had the highest cultivation, the others would not be able to survive. West Hill City would also be completely destroyed. The core of the Great Qin dynasty's dragon vein qi would also completely collapse, and it would be difficult to rebuild it for a long time. This period of time was enough for Emperor Zhou Liangpan to gather all the dragon qi in Great Qin through the Grand Imperial Palace and guide it to Tianjing City, laying a solid foundation for Great Zhou to unify the mortal world. The foundations of the Great Qin Empire had been passed down to this day had been completely destroyed. After experiencing complete despair, even though this result was acceptable for the emperor and ministers, they were still unwilling. This was especially so for the new emperor Shi Zongtang. He would rather die in battle. However, very quickly, Sky City above West Hill City once again changed, causing Shi Zongtang's mind to tremble. The glowing remains of the Sky Castle gradually dispersed and turned back into 12 balls of light that were flashing with dazzling light. These 12 balls of light did not take the form of the 12 heavenly generals, and instead fell onto the city walls. When these huge figures of light fell on the walls of West Hill City, the light gradually began to condense. The flowing light dissipated, and the figures that were originally completely composed of light began to become tangible and material again. The power of Western Tomb City fused with it, and as it continued to change, the 12 figures gradually turned into 12 sitting statues. They seemed to be made of brass, and they flashed with a faint golden light. They sat on the city walls of West Hill City. A powerful and indestructible concept of power flowed out from them. The 12 golden men formed a formation, and in terms of pure defense, it was even stronger than the remains of Sky City. The dragon vein qi gathered by the Great Qin dynasty and West Hill City's formations continuously poured into the golden men's bodies. In the vast surroundings, large amounts of spiritual qi continuously gathered, especially the metal essence qi, which was continuously absorbed into the bodies of the 12 metal men to strengthen themselves. Seeing this, Shi Zongtang's eyes lit up, and he exclaimed in his heart, after the city in the sky turned from a physical body to a spiritual body, the 12 heavenly immortal generals, who were originally spiritual bodies, turned into physical bodies at this moment. Such a change is not only due to the comprehension of the remains of the ancient Sky Gate Sky City, but it is also further fusing with other great Tao concepts. Is this the profundity of the mysterious Gate Sky Sex Tao technique? Although it was only for a brief moment, it was still breathtaking. The 12 golden men appeared and instantly stabilized West Hill City, which was on the verge of collapse. The cracks that had been spreading ferociously finally stopped expanding. The power of both sides combined to resist the powerful destructive power that was guided along the Qi meridians. Finally, the destructive power that was like an apocalypse started to weaken rapidly after exploding to the extreme. From start to finish, it actually only took a very short time. However, to the new Great Qin Emperor Shi Zongtang and the other Great Qin dynasty cultivators, it felt like thousands of years of torture. When the power that was transmitted through the Qi meridians finally disappeared, even Shi Zongtang could not help but heave a sigh of relief. As for the other Great Qin dynasty cultivators, they all felt like they had a new lease on life. All the Great Qin dynasty cultivators, including Shi Zongtang, cupped their hands towards the sky. Thank you, Celestial Venerable Huang, for turning the tide. We are extremely grateful for your help. Shi Tianhao's voice came from the sky. Fellow Taoists, you are too kind. In the palace, Shi Zongtang looked at the ball of light above the hall silently. Then, he waved his hand, and the ball of light instantly dissipated. West Hill City no longer gathered the chi of the dragon vein, and the chi meridian connection between White Cloud Mountain and the Grand Imperial Palace was severed. At this time, Shi Zongtang finally had the time to carefully sense the surroundings. The result made his heart heavy again. The great Qin primordial spirit realm cultivators guarding West Hill City suffered heavy casualties in this battle. Everyone, including Shi Zongtang, was injured. Before Shi Tianhao arrived, the moment West Hill City was attacked was also the moment when the pressure was the greatest. West Hill City's formation was about to shatter, and the casualties were the highest. Some Void Return Realm cultivators had their Void Return Realm bodies shattered, and they immediately fell to the Primordial Spirit Incarnation Realm. There was even a Primordial Spirit Incarnation Realm cultivator who died on the spot. In this calamity, the Great Qin dynasty, which was already in a precarious situation, clearly showed signs of collapsing. Although West Hill City and the defensive formation were not broken, they suffered heavy damage. The buildings and streets in the city were completely turned into ruins. The only building that was barely intact was the Great Qin Imperial Palace, but it was also in ruins at this moment. All the Great Qin dynasty cultivators felt extremely heavy after surviving the calamity. The Great Qin dynasty, which had suffered heavy losses continuously, seemed to be on the decline. The past glory was still vivid in everyone's mind, but in the blink of an eye, it had burst like a bubble. At this moment, the storm had finally calmed down. The Great Qin dynasty cultivators returned to the main hall of the palace and swallowed pills. Silently, they adjusted their breathing and healed their injuries. The new Great Qin Emperor, Shi Zongtang, sat on the dragon throne in the main hall. He fell into silence and did not speak for a long time. The other Great Qin dynasty experts were also silent. After a long time, Shi Zongtang broke the silence and said, "Contact Monarch Zhenyang and the others." A Great Qin dynasty cultivator answered, "Yes, Your Majesty." He flicked his finger and shot out a stream of light. It was a voice transmission crystal that shattered and connected to the other side. It was Shi Zongmao, the Great Qin's King of Rock Sun, who had been ordered to go directly to the Kunlun mountain range without returning to West Hill City. The heavens bless the Great Qin, may the Emperor be safe. Shi Zongmao's old voice sounded, and he also revealed a sense of relief. Shi Zongtang and the others had the time to send a message, which meant that the Great Qin dynasty had survived this calamity. The Great Qin cultivator immediately reported what had happened to Shi Zongmao. After hearing this, Shi Zongmao also fell into a short period of silence. After a long time, he slowly said, "Your Majesty, although the Great Qin dynasty has survived this calamity, the situation has changed drastically again. We should make a decision as soon as possible about where the Great Qin dynasty should go." Shi Zongtang stared at the top of the hall and nodded slowly. "I have the same thoughts, so I ordered someone to contact you, brother." Shi Zongmao asked, "How is Celestial Venerable Huang doing now?" "Although he is injured, he should be fine. His mind is still immersed in the remains of the city in the sky and the spirit bodies of the 12 heavenly generals. It seems that other than trying to figure out the marvels, he is also verifying with what he has learned," Shi Zongtang said silently. "For the time being, he should still stay here in West Hill City." Shi Zongtang lightly knocked on the dragon table in front of him. "I communicated with his consciousness earlier. His master, the master of Xian Men, has officially returned to the Divine Land and descended on White Cloud Mountain to fight the Yudu race." Hearing this, whether it was Shi Zongmao, who had transmitted his voice using magic power, or the other Great Qin dynasty cultivators present, they all felt much more relaxed. "That's good." The Great Qin dynasty reorganized the broken West Hill City while holding court again. To the Great Qin dynasty, it was like they were walking on thin ice. Any decision could have a huge impact. On top of the city walls of West Hill City, the 12 golden men sat silently and solemnly, as if they were suppressing the heavens. Shi Tianhao's figure reappeared in human form. He sat cross-legged in the void with his eyes closed. His hands formed a spell, and his mind was immersed in comprehending the paths, skills, and divine arts. At this moment, the path of yin and yang in front of him was already clearly visible. This path was also faintly compatible with the concept of the remains of the city in the sky that he had just obtained. They could verify and comprehend each other. At this moment, while Shi Tianhao was comprehending his own path, he was also strengthening his understanding and control of the remains of the city in the sky. Great sage Lu Yuan also came to the vicinity of West Hill City. He looked at Shi Tianhao, who was meditating with his eyes closed, and his heart wavered. The people of Xianmen Tianzong really can't be judged with common sense. Just as he was sighing, he saw Shi Tianhao's body tremble slightly, and he opened his eyes. Great sage Lu Yuan was slightly stunned. Next, his heart stirred, and he looked towards the western horizon. Chapter 1231. A beam of light flashed across the western sky. It was so bright and dazzling that it looked like a meteor streaking across the sky. However, this flowing light was extremely bright even in the daytime. It even overshadowed the sunlight in the sky. However, this light did not make people feel warm at all. Instead, it had a cold texture, like cold metal. The light stayed in the sky above West Hill City for a while. A terrifying demonic aura spread out, as if it was going to slaughter the world. When the light dissipated, the figure of a fierce white tiger was revealed. Its eyes flashed with a cold and demonic light. There was no emotion in them. It was a pure-blooded white tiger great demon at the initial tribulation stage. It was only a step away from the Dharma ending realm. Its magical powers and demonic power were extremely powerful. The appearance of the white tiger made the people of the Great Qin dynasty nervous again. Although most people knew that the pure-blooded white tiger was captured by Lin Feng years ago and rarely appeared in the world after that, the sudden appearance of the white tiger great sage in West Hill City still made the hearts of the people of the Great Qin dynasty hang in suspense. Even though the white tiger great sage had pledged allegiance to the celestial sect of wonders, his sudden appearance at this critical juncture was enough to make many human cultivators shudder in fear. They could not figure out what he was thinking. Even Lu Yuan the great sage felt a little nervous when he saw the white tiger great sage. The white tiger great sage was much stronger than him. Shi Tianhao's expression was relatively calm. He looked up at the white tiger great sage and said with a smile, "Your Excellency, have you come out of seclusion?" The white tiger great sage stopped in the void and nodded. "Yes, it's not too late. I can still make it in time." His voice was cold, like the clashing of gold and iron. He continued, "After learning that I have come out of seclusion, the sect master has ordered me to come here to receive the temple master of the Taishu temple, Yan Nanlai." Hearing the words, Taishu temple, Shi Tianhao curled his lips and did not say anything. Ever since the Taishu temple accepted Shi Tianyi as a disciple despite knowing what had happened in the past, he had never had a good impression of this number one holy land of the human race. When the Taishu temple tried to use his parents as bait to send him, Zhu Yi, and the others into the mysterious sea, forcing his master, Lin Feng, to enter the mysterious sea to fight against the dragon clan, his good impression of him, which was already in the negatives, completely fell into the abyss. However, Shi Tianhao was well aware of the changes in the current situation and the key points. He knew what to do at the right time. Not to mention that Lin Feng ordered White Tiger Great Sage to go to the rescue. Even if Lin Feng ordered him to go to the rescue himself, he would not object. Of course, this didn't prevent him from gloating when he found out about the predicament the Taishu temple was in, and he laughed so hard that he couldn't stand straight. Just like Master said, the king of the underworld is really patient. Previously, he had been helping West Hill City block the disaster, and after that, he had immersed himself in cultivation. At this moment, after hearing White Tiger Great Sage's words from Lin Feng, Shi Tianhao finally understood how Yan Nanlai had risked his life to break out of the White Cloud Mountain. The smile on Shi Tianhao's face lessened a little. So, the king of the underworld took drastic measures and used Yan Xinghe's evil soul to shake the Haotian mirror, and Yan Nanlai's plan was to use the Blood Soul Tranquility Curse to similarly take drastic measures and curse his own ancestor, Yan Xinghe, to death? At the mention of the Blood Soul Tranquility Curse, White Tiger Great Sage and Lu Yuan Great Sage's expressions were still normal, but they didn't look happy either. Although the demon race had already resolved the threat of the Blood Soul curse many years ago, the threat and damage that this curse had brought to the demon race was real. When White Tiger Great Sage and Lu Yuan Great Sage were born, the Blood Soul curse was no longer effective. However, they naturally knew about what had happened in the past from their clan's inheritance. It's also possible that he used this opportunity to escape from White Cloud Mountain alone, and the idea of dying together was just an excuse. White Tiger Great Sage said faintly, but the sect master feels that this person can be trusted. Moreover, no egg can remain intact when the Haotian mirror is destroyed. The Taishu temple is very likely to be destroyed. Shi Tianhao said, according to Mr. Miao, this master of Yen Monastery is an extreme conservative in the Taishu temple. He shouldn't be lying and trying to drag out an ignoble existence, so he can be trusted. If he really has such a determination, although his previous actions are disgusting, his actions today are worthy of admiration. White Tiger Great Sage said coldly, I'm not interested in this person. What I'm interested in are the Yudu beasts that are chasing him. Shi Tianhao smiled. The father of White Tiger in front of him, the previous White Tiger Great Sage, had fallen under the hands of the Yudu race many years ago. Shi Tianhao was naturally clear about his hatred towards the Yudu race. White Tiger Great Sage's abilities were much stronger than those of the Great Sage of Lu Yuan Great Sage, and his character was also more unyielding. Although he had been subdued by Lin Feng for many years, during the battle between Lin Feng and Mirage Sun and Yudu, White Tiger Great Sage's autonomy was undoubtedly much higher. It was still a question how effective the restrictions that Lin Feng had placed on him could be. But now that the Yudu race had descended, Lin Feng wasn't worried that White Tiger Great Sage would bite back. That was because compared to the human race, White Tiger Great Sage's most hostile target was Yudu. White Tiger Great Sage, who had been cultivating in seclusion, came out now. This could be used to deal with Yudu, and White Tiger Great Sage was more than happy to do so. There are many conditions for Yen Nanlai to execute the curse of Blood Soul Tranquility. First, there's a limit to the distance. He has to get close to the King of the Underworld and Yen Xinghe, and he needs time to execute the spell. If he's chased by Yudu, even if he can escape, he won't be able to execute the spell. Shi Tianhao said, other than him, it's too difficult for others to confirm the location of the King of the Underworld and the rest, so we'll just help him. However, I'm not done with my technique, and I still need some time. I'll have to trouble you to go first. White Tiger Great Sage didn't say anything more. He transformed into a resplendent shooting star and continued to flee into the distance. Shi Tianhao turned to look at Lu Yuan Great Sage. You and White Tiger Great Sage can go together. According to Master, there are at least 3 Yudu beasts chasing after us. The Great Chanyu of Northern Militant Imperial Court is also rushing over with Longevity Heavenly Spear. I'll catch up to them soon. Lu Yuan Great Sage grinned unwillingly. During the war between the two worlds, even though he didn't have the cultivation he had today, he had seen the terror of Yudu clearly. However, he shook his head and still took a step forward, following in the direction that White Tiger Great Sage was heading. Yen Nanlai flew through the void, and when he noticed that Western Tomb City was fine, he couldn't help feeling slightly astonished. However, he soon felt an extraordinary aura approaching him. He frowned slightly, and after a moment, he received a voice transmission from the Great Chanyu of Northern Militant Imperial Court. After hearing the general introduction of the situation, Yen Nanlai replied, "Thank you for your trouble." In his current situation, time was of the essence, so he couldn't be bothered with pleasantries. He immediately flew into the distance at an extremely fast speed. White Tiger Great Sage, Great Chanyu of Northern Militant, and Lu Yuan Great Sage blocked Yen Nanlai's back, intercepting the strong practitioners of Yudu who were chasing from the direction of White Cloud Mountain. The void opened up at that moment, and purple light flashed. 3 heads stood up, and tall Yudu beasts walked out. Ming Yudu, who was in the lead, swept his gaze across the Great Chanyu of Northern Militant and Lu Yuan Great Sage. He didn't stop there, and his gaze finally landed on White Tiger Great Sage. White Tiger Great Sage's cold gaze also landed on the 3 Yudu beasts in front of him. Beside Ming Yudu was a Yudu beast that looked like a young human. He bared his teeth and smiled. A pure-blooded white tiger will also be raised like a dog. From the information that Great Qin's king of Jingfang Shi-Lin and Thunderous Sword Venerable Ben Lazy had received, Yudu tribe had also heard about Lin Feng going to Heaven Wasteland to capture the white tiger. Ning Feng, he came to intercept us. Even though he was sent by the master of Xian Gate, without him, he would still view our tribe as an enemy and wait for an opportunity to strike, Ming Yudu said indifferently. After all, his father died at the hands of the clan master back then. Ning Feng Yudu bared his teeth and smiled. That's right, I've heard of it. When the clan master had just reached the last day's realm, he had slain that last day's white tiger. White Tiger Great Sage stared coldly at the three Yudu beasts in front of him. He didn't waste any words and directly revealed his true form. He raised his head to the sky and roared, causing the stars in the sky to tremble. The resplendent stars were like a meteor shower that started to crash down on Ming Yudu and the others. Ming Yudu said coldly, "Leave this white tiger to me. Deal with the remaining two yourselves. Try your best to catch up. Even though I don't know what the cultivator of Taishu Temple wants to do, just don't let him succeed." After saying that, he also raised his head to the sky and roared. The triangle on top of his head flashed, and large amounts of silver-white fur spread out from his body. Purple light flashed wildly, and his body also became much bigger. Facing the White Tiger Great Sage's White Tiger Starfall Divine Art, halos of light flew out from the three long horns on top of Ming Yudu's head, trapping the falling stars in the sky. Even though the stars were still bright after being trapped by the halos of light, they instantly calmed down. They were no longer as destructive and murderous as before. The light in White Tiger Great Sage's eyes was ice-cold and silent. The stars that were trapped suddenly dimmed, and all of their power collapsed toward the center. They were filled with an aura of destruction that was heading towards the end of the road. It was another innate great divine art of the White Tiger race, Nirvana Death Star. Under the explosion of the demonic power divine art, the stars were destroyed, and even the halos that were trapping them were broken. However, Ming Yudu's figure flashed, and he was already in the sky. He then swung his claw at White Tiger Great Sage, and a few streams of light tore the heaven and earth apart. Looking at White Tiger Great Sage fighting with Light Slayer of Yudu, Great Sage Lu Yuan and Great Chanyu of Northern Militant felt their hearts sink. Even though they knew how powerful the Yudu race was, they were still astonished. White Tiger Great Sage was only one tribulation away from completely passing through the first tribulation and entering the Dharma ending realm. As a pure-blooded white tiger, his demonic power was strong, and he was extremely good at killing. Among all the demon races that were going through the first tribulation, he was a top-notch existence. In a life-and-death battle, he was even better than Jade's Sky Dragon King, Zhu Yan Great Sage, and Huangshan Dragon King, who hadn't finished their tribulations. His opponent, Ming Yudu, was still a distance away from completely passing through the first tribulation, but now that he was fighting with White Tiger Great Sage, he wasn't afraid at all. Lu Yuan. I haven't eaten it before. I heard from Uncle Qingyuan that Lu Yuan's brain tastes better. I didn't expect to be able to taste it today. At that moment, Ning Feng Yudu suddenly smiled lazily. In the next instant, he transformed into purple light and appeared in front of Great Sage Lu Yuan and Great Chanyu of the Northern Militant. Chapter 1232. Ning Feng Yudu's figure flashed, and he appeared in front of Great Sage Lu Yuan and Great Chanyu Bei Rong. Under the violent surge of demonic energy, large amounts of silver hair grew out of his body that looked like a human's limbs and covered his entire body. On the periphery of the long hair, there was a layer of purple light flashing. On the surface of the purple light, large amounts of green runes appeared and circulated endlessly, shaking the void. Ning Feng Yudu immediately revealed his true form and raised his power to the peak. He raised his two claws and clawed at Great Sage Lu Yuan and Great Chanyu Bei Rong. Rays of green light flashed across the void and directly shattered the space. It was like a sharp blade that separated heaven and earth. That violent power caused Great Sage Lu Yuan and Great Chanyu Bei Rong to feel apprehensive. This Yudu beast that had yet to experience tribulation at union of star and soul realm had such powerful demonic energy that it actually surpassed Great Sage Xiang Lu, who had just experienced the first tribulation. Great Sage Lu Yuan looked crazy, but he was actually very slippery. He naturally had a standard to judge the strength of his enemy. However, Ning Feng Yudu's main target was him, and his speed was astonishingly fast. Great Sage Lu Yuan could only receive the attack. He raised his head to the sky and let out a roar. His body expanded and became incomparably huge, exceeding 30,000 yards. Standing between heaven and earth, he also revealed his true form at the first instant. The circular rune on Great Sage Lu Yuan's forehead instantly swayed like a round mirror that shone with dazzling white light. The myriad mirror revolving phenomenon divine art was activated at this moment. The white light violently twisted as though it couldn't bear the burden and the mirror was about to shatter. But from the white light, the rays of green radiance that Ning Feng Yudu had placed into it were still reflected. Next, the green light rushed out from the white light and clashed with Ning Feng Yudu's attack. The void between heaven and earth was destroyed on a large scale, and cracks were slashed out. The shattered green light danced wildly like countless tornadoes, turning the surrounding area into a sea of storms. When Ning Feng Yudu saw this, his eyes lit up. Oh! This is the first time I've seen the mirror rotating myriad manifestations divine art of Lu Yuan's race. Not bad. Suddenly, he had a thought. His body turned into a green light and flashed in the void. In the next instant, the void where Ning Feng Yudu was previously standing was annihilated. A human burly man stabbed over with a black spear. The human clan man's chi and blood surged wildly, gradually showing signs of returning to the natural state. Although his chi and blood were still blazing hot, the masculine chi and blood gradually gave off a sense of vastness. As the acupoints on his body opened and closed, it was as if billions of stars were twinkling in the starry sky. It was fine when he didn't exert his strength, but once he did, his body, which was only slightly taller than an ordinary person, suddenly emitted a powerful explosive force that was like the destruction of the universe. He was the Northern Militant Royal Court's Great Chanyu, a Dao integration stage martial Dao powerhouse and the current #1 powerhouse of the Northern Militant Royal Court. In terms of the power of his physical body alone, he was comparable to many peerless great demons at the Star-Soul integration stage. The black iron spear in his hand was naturally the #1 magic treasure of the Northern Militant Royal Court, the Longevity Heavenly Spear. This Mahayana-grade magic treasure was a pure killing weapon, and it was most suitable for martial arts powerhouses to use. At that moment, the Northern Militant First Chanyu mobilized the Longevity Heavenly Spear, pouring all of his martial will and power into the Longevity Heavenly Spear. The two of them fused as one, resulting in a formidable martial assassination power. Not even a great Yao at the one with the Astral Soul stage would dare to take it head-on. A single stab would leave a bloody hole. Not to mention Great Sage Lu Yuan, even compared to Ning Feng Yudu, the Northern Militant First Chanyu's figure seemed extremely small at this moment. However, this seemingly small body contained an extremely terrifying power. It was extremely ferocious in close combat. The Northern Militant First Chanyu's eyes flashed. Not only had his primordial spirit completely fused with his physical body, even the Dao fruit after Dao integration had been refined into his physical body. The violent power could shatter the void with his physical body, push mountains and fill seas, and pluck the stars and the moon. His attack did not hit, so he immediately exploded his power again, pushing the short-range explosive power of a martial cultivator to the extreme. His speed was even faster than the primordial spirit's teleportation as he continued to chase after Ning Feng Yudu. Seeing this, Ning Feng Yudu raised his eyebrows. The demonic power turned into rays of green light that compressed in the air, forming a long spear. The long spear gradually turned from green to black, and its killing intent soared to the sky. In a split second, the green and black light spear flashed in the void and pierced towards the Northern Militant First Chanyu. The green and black light spear instantly shattered the void and collided with the Longevity Heavenly Spear. Both sides clashed violently, setting off an ear-piercing explosion. The two long spears rubbed against each other. The green and black light spear's direction was deviated, but the northern militant first Chanyu's spear also deviated from its original path. Ning Feng Yudu sneered, and the green and black light spear suddenly shattered when it was just inches away from the northern militant first Chanyu. It turned into a sky full of green light rain that struck towards the northern militant first Chanyu. Although every ray of light in the dense light rain was fragmented, the northern militant first Chanyu could clearly feel the terrifying destructive power within. He gave a low shout, and chi and blood rose above his head, forming an illusion of light and shadow. In the illusion, there was a vast grassland and endless blue sky. There was snow, rain, wind, frost, and the changes of the 4 seasons. The blue sky was boundless. The northern militant first Chanyu manifested his martial will to the extreme, and the longevity heavenly spear also resonated, giving off a sharp and fierce cry. The momentum of the spear suddenly changed, and the sky full of spear shadows flashed repeatedly. It was so fast that people couldn't see them clearly. However, within the range of the spear shadows, the void seemed to be completely sealed. Everything in the space seemed to be completely still, and even the specks of dust floated motionlessly in the air, as though it was a still picture. The sky full of green light rain was also blocked, and it was hard for it to advance an inch. The next moment, the northern militant first Chanyu's momentum changed again, and the sky full of spear shadows disappeared. What was left was a black light that pierced towards Ning Feng Yudu again. In an instant, the extreme complexity became extreme simplicity, and the extreme stillness became extreme movement, displaying the profoundness of martial arts. However, before the northern militant first Chanyu could attack again, numerous green and black light spears had already pierced towards him. Great Sage Lu Yuan grunted, and the halo on his forehead flashed with white light again, reflecting the image of the green and black light spears. He wanted to use Myriad Manifestations Mirror to fight against Ning Feng Yudu's divine art. However, Ning Feng Yudu's abilities were clearly stronger than his, so it was extremely difficult for Great Sage Lu Yuan's Myriad Manifestations Mirror to reflect the green and black light spears. Out of all the light spears, he could only reflect one. As Great Sage Lu Yuan roared, white light spewed out from his mouth, and it transformed into a boundless hurricane to attack. The northern militant first Chanyu had no choice but to change his move again and deflect the green and black light spears that were piercing towards him. Both the northern militant first Chanyu and Great Sage Lu Yuan wanted to find a chance to fight in close combat, but under Ning Feng Yudu's violent attacks, they could only defend with all their might. Right at this moment, what made their hearts sink was the other strong practitioner of Yudu race that had merged with the stars and souls. Wan Long Yudu had an indifferent expression. He stood at the side and looked at them silently. The 3 long horns on his head were flashing with cold brilliance. Wan Long, go and chase after that cultivator of Taishu Temple. From the looks of it now, I alone am enough. Ning Feng Yudu suddenly bared his teeth and smiled. Even though there are few primordial spirit practitioners in Taishu Temple, I'm more interested in trying Lu Yuan's brain today. As he said that, purple brilliance flashed wildly on his body and shone with the green markings. Amidst the green and purple, the 3 long horns on his head became more and more dazzling. Ning Feng Yudu stared at Great Sage Lu Yuan and sneered. Can your Myriad Manifestations Mirror reflect this thing? With a long howl, a green brilliance shot out from the heart of his brows. It was like a green rainbow that shot towards Great Sage Lu Yuan. That power was ethereal and brutal. Wherever it passed, the void was instantly destroyed. Yudu Mist Flower. Great Sage Lu Yuan's expression changed. He didn't even need to try to know that his Myriad Manifestations Mirror would definitely be unable to reflect this destructive attack. Without any hesitation, Great Sage Lu Yuan burst forth with all the power in his body. However, it wasn't to face the attack head-on. Instead, he leaped and broke through the void, trying to dodge with all his might. If he got hit by this attack, even if he didn't die, he would be heavily injured. Other than the Myriad Manifestations Mirror, the power of the chi and blood of the corporeal body was also extremely strong. Their speed wasn't slow, and they had the reputation of being able to step on 1,000 mountains. Great Sage Lu Yuan leaped and instantly broke through layers of the void to escape. Even so, he was still hit by Ning Feng Yudu's Yudu Mist Flower. One of his monkey claws was sliced off by that terrifying green brilliance. Great Sage Lu Yuan gave a miserable cry, and it was extremely mournful. Ning Feng Yudu laughed loudly, and the Yudu Mist Flower turned and swept towards Great Chanyu of the Northern Militant. On the other side of the battlefield, Radiant Yudu, whose divine art had been broken by White Tiger Great Sage's nirvanic Death Stars, had a calm expression. His 3 horns were flashing, and his body was shrouded in a purple halo. On the surface of the purple halo, there were dark golden divine markings spreading through the void. That terrifying aura was much stronger than Ning Feng Yudu's. Even when facing White Tiger Great Sage, who was only a step away from completing his tribulation, he didn't lose out. His eyes flickered, and the purple light suddenly vanished. Replacing it were 2 rays of light, one gold and one silver. They flowed continuously like the sun and moon alternating. Yudu's sun and moon radiance, Radiant Yudu said coldly. Then, 2 rays of light, one gold and one silver, rushed out from the heart of his brows. They intersected in the void and fused into a dark golden flash. This terrifying dark golden splendor swept through the void and broke apart the nirvanic Death Stars that were falling towards Radiant Yudu. White Tiger Great Sage's gaze was cold, and his killing intent was awe-inspiring. He let out a heaven-shaking tiger roar, and boundless strong winds came whistling over, splitting heaven and earth. The clouds followed the dragon, and the wind followed the tiger. The tiger's roar gave rise to the wind. 9 heavens divine wind black gold sword stars. This incomparably sharp strike actually broke apart Radiant Yudu's sun and moon splendor. Radiant Yudu didn't seem to mind. What a powerful divine art. Among the demons under the end of cultivation, in terms of pure attack power, probably only Jing Yan's Yudu brilliance can defeat this strike of yours. However, you won't be able to execute this kind of attack continuously. After saying so, he executed Radiant Yudu's sun and moon splendor again to attack White Tiger Great Sage. Wanlong Yudu looked at both sides of the battlefield silently, and he thought to himself, there's no need to worry about Ning Feng, and there's nothing to worry about here. I can chase after that Taishu Temple cultivator without worry. As he was thinking, his heart suddenly stirred, and he turned around. He saw the void in the horizon shattering, and a figure walked out. Chapter 1233. The strong practitioners of Yudu race, White Tiger Great Sage, Northern Militant Great Chanyu, and Lu Yuan Great Sage fought intensely. But at that moment, the void suddenly shattered, and a figure walked out. He was tall and handsome, and it was none other than Shi Tianhao. Above his head, there was a transparent city that was completely made of light. The city was majestic and huge, just like the blue sky and blue sky. When Zhanming Yudu, Wanlong Yudu, and Ning Feng Yudu saw Shi Tianhao, they frowned slightly. At that moment, Shi Tianhao, who had a radiant city above his head that was like a spirit body, stood calmly in the void. There was no special aura leaking out from his body, and he looked very ordinary. Even though that majestic city was vast, it didn't give off a majestic feeling of power. But the moment Shi Tianhao appeared, a strong sense of danger arose in the hearts of Wanlong Yudu and Ning Feng Yudu. It was as though they had instinctively felt danger. Even Zhanming Yudu had a strange feeling in his heart. Shi Tianhao swept his gaze across the battlefield, and he couldn't help grinning. Then, a violent aura burst forth from his body, and his qi and blood surged. He was much more ferocious than Great Sage Lu Yuan and Northern Militant Great Chanyu. His corporeal body gave off a desolate and primitive aura, and as Shi Tianhao smiled, his aura suddenly became extremely brutal. It was as though a primordial beast had descended into the mortal world. Feeling the change in Shi Tianhao's body, Wanlong Yudu, Ning Feng Yudu, and Great Sage Lu Yuan were slightly dazed. It was as though the person in front of them was a great demon that was even more brutal than them. Shi Tianhao's violent qi and blood resonated with the city formed by the spirit light above his head. That radiant celestial city was no longer calm at that moment. Instead, it gave off an extremely vast power. With a flash of light, Shi Tianhao and the radiant city vanished. When they appeared again, they were already in front of Ning Fengyu. Ning Fengyu held his breath, he could feel the immense pressure. Although he was arrogant, he didn't dare to be careless at this moment. Green runes flickered around his body, and his body dissipated like a gust of wind, disappearing in an instant. Retreating, he had to first understand Shi Tianhao's foundation before making any further plans. However, the radiant city above Shi Tianhao's head trembled, and green light instantly swept across the heaven and earth, shining Shi Tianhao's figure once again. Shi Tianhao himself shouted and punched towards Ning Fengyu. Ning Fengyu's eyes flashed with cold light. A large number of greenish-black light spears appeared in the air and shot towards Shi Tianhao. Shi Tianhao sneered, and the aura of desolation surged around him. The Huang character formula of the mysterious yellow forward formula strengthened his body, and a large amount of spirit light from the city above his head fell down, fusing with the aura of desolation, forming a protective light that was both light and mist at the same time. The vigorous power directly clashed with the terrifying greenish-black light spears. Even though the greenish-black light spears burst forth with terrifying power and stabbed into the protective light on Shi Tianhao's body, they couldn't hurt Shi Tianhao. Meanwhile, Shi Tianhao's iron fist that could shatter the void was still smashing towards Ning Fengyu. At this moment, Wanlong Yudu, who was on the other side, suddenly roared and revealed his true form. The three long horns on the top of his head shone with ice-blue brilliance and transformed into divine markings that filled the sky, sealing the surrounding heaven and earth in ice. Yudu absolute condensation. From the heart of Wanlong Yudu's brows, a smear of ice-blue light shone out. It was like a frozen path that continuously extended forward in the void. Wherever the ice-blue light passed, everything was sealed in ice. That terrifying power was actually even more terrifying than the 9 underworlds Yin wind, Xian Ming true water, and 10,000 years mysterious ice. The ice-blue light spread out continuously and transformed into frost that covered the sky, shrouding Shi Tianhao within. When Shi Tianhao saw the situation, he curled his lips and turned to look at Wanlong Yudu. A ray of light shot out from the heart of his brows, and it was like a rainbow that shocked the sky. It triggered the chanting of thousands of great Daos, and countless rays spread out in the world like an ocean of light. And everywhere that majestic divine light passed by, it was as if it was drawing an end point for everything, sending everything to its end. It was Shi Tianhao's divine light of end. This ray of light that seemed to be able to contain all the magnificence and power in the world brazenly sliced apart the ice-blue sky in front of him. The power of the divine light of creation would continuously increase along with the increase of the cultivator's divine art magic power and cultivation realm. At this moment, this divine light of end of Shi Tianhao displayed an extremely astonishing power. Wanlong Yudu frowned, and the ice-blue light that was spreading out suddenly congealed. It quickly retracted and collided with Shi Tianhao's divine light of end. The ice-blue light shattered continuously, but the rainbow-like divine light seemed to have gradually sunk into silence. On the other side, Ning Fengyu roared at the sky, and the green Yudu flowing mist splendor poured out violently to bombard Shi Tianhao's fist that was strengthened by the radiant city and the air of desolation. It formed a huge green whirlpool, and in the whirlpool, countless green divine markings shone together to block Shi Tianhao's iron fist that was continuously advancing. Shi Tianhao looked at Ning Fengyu and Wanlong Yudu with interest. TSK, the Yudu race is indeed better than hearing about it. Even though Dao Friend Grand Firmament is also Yudu, you still don't have a true corporeal body. Hearing the name of Grand Firmament, Ning Feng and Wanlong's expressions changed slightly, but what Shi Tianhao said next instantly made them dumbfounded. Based on experience, other than a few special circumstances, the stronger the demon race, the better the taste. Shi Tianhao stared at the two great demons of Yudu, and his eyes shone continuously. Your taste must be extremely good, right? Ning Fengyu and Wanlong Yudu almost suspected that they had heard wrongly, but right after, Shi Tianhao revealed his white teeth and said with a smile, I haven't eaten Yudu before, so I can try something new today. Not bad, not bad. However, which one should we eat first? Great Sage Lu Yuan and Great Chan Yubei Rong, who had reorganized themselves to come forward to help, also had weird expressions at this moment. It was especially so for great sage Lu Yuan, who didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Not long ago, Ning Feng Yude was still thinking about splitting him open and eating his brains. Who knew that in just a short while, it was Ning Feng Yude's turn to be targeted by a human who wanted to kill him and eat his flesh. As a demon, he had this kind of fear of being harmed, but he also had the complicated feeling of getting his revenge and letting out a sigh of relief. This made great sage Lu Yuan's heart flutter. The smile on Ning Feng Yude's face vanished, and his gaze was fixed on Shi Tianhao. When Shi Tianhao met his gaze, he turned his head over as if nothing had happened. He said with a calm smile, "You're staring at me like that, are you impatient to enter my mouth? Since that's the case, I'll eat you first." After Shi Tianhao said that, his body suddenly trembled, and his body transformed from the body of desolate god into the body of abundant vitality. The powerful qi, blood, and the air of desolation in his corporeal body vanished, and his body suddenly transformed into the appearance of a Taiji diagram. Meanwhile, the radiant city above his head gradually transformed into a material entity. The light scattered, and even though it was damaged and dilapidated, the majestic city in the sky appeared and smashed down on Ning Feng Yude's head. The power of the city in the sky and the body of abundant vitality that Shi Tianhao had cultivated complemented each other and supported each other. The divine light of the end that shot out from the center of the Taiji diagram that his abundant vitality transformed into became even stronger. Under the reinforcement of the city in the sky, it started to suppress the Yuda's absolute essence. The terrifying divine light of the end had a momentum that seemed to be able to cut through everything and broke through the Yuda's absolute essence. Meanwhile, the city in the sky on the other side had also become extremely violent under the nourishment of Shi Tianhao's abundant vitality. It broke through the layers of clouds and smashed towards Ning Feng Yude with the momentum of collapsing the heavens. The green mist formed by the Yudu flowing mist flower tumbled and dispersed continuously. The huge city in the sky combined with the magic power of Shi Tianhao's divine arts. Even though it looked like a ruin, it gave off a majestic aura that could suppress the heavens. Great Chanyu Bei Rong saw it from the side, and astonishment burst forth from his eyes. Such power is truly breathtaking, and this is just one of the many disciples of the Master of Profound Gate, that city that keeps changing. What exactly is? Wait a minute. This concept of power is similar to the path skills of the ancient heavenly gate. Could it be the legendary city in the sky? This thing actually still exists, and even though it's broken now, its power is still so strong. Even White Tiger Great Sage and Radiant Yudu who were fighting at the side had their attention attracted by Shi Tianhao. They looked at Shi Tianhao and the city in the sky. That was a power that could already threaten them. Radiant Yudu looked at Shi Tianhao and frowned slightly. With a thought, purple light that was engraved with dark golden markings spread out like sunlight. Under the shroud of the purple light, the void trembled continuously. Light and dark intersected like the sun and moon alternating, and yin and yang seemed to be separated again. Seeing that, Shi Tianhao laughed from the Tai Chi diagram. As it continued to spin, the Ying Yuan body turned back into the desolate god body. The gigantic city in the sky suddenly changed. The gigantic city turned into a halo of light and divided into the surroundings, turning into 12 giants that could support the heavens and the earth. The spirit bodies of the 12 heavenly god generals each said one word, and they exhaled as one. Immortal. Void. Instrument. Shu'a. Celestial. Yi. Jun. Tian. Zhu. Chaos. Wholeness. Subjugation. The powerful corporeal body and qi of Shi Tianhao's body of desolate god were executed together with the aura of desolation, forming a marvelous balance to execute the 12 heavenly god generals. The 12 heavenly god generals held huge halberds in their hands and pointed at Radiant Yudu who was in the sky. Countless misty worlds seemed to form in heaven and earth, surrounding the 12 heavenly god generals and Shi Tianhao to form a huge roulette. As the roulette rotated, it was as if the power of the 10,000 worlds in the heavens had gathered together to form an unstoppable power that crushed everything in front of it. That power that looked slow but had a majestic aura circulated and forcefully crushed Yuda's demonic power. Cold light flashed in radiant Yuda's eyes, and the 3 horns on the top of his head flowed with radiance. 2 rays of light, one gold and one silver, rushed out from the heart of his brows and converged in the sky to form the terrifying brilliance of Yuda's sun and moon. But at this moment, White Tiger Great Sage had already rushed forward, forcing Radiant Yudu to have no choice but to turn his attention back to Ningfeng Yudu and Wanlong Yudu. Shi Tianhao, on the other hand, sneered and separated his hands to strike at Ningfeng Yudu and Wanlong Yudu. The spirit bodies of the 12 heavenly god generals retracted their halberds and switched to fists, doing the same action. The power of both sides merged together and boosted each other, instantly forming an incomparably violent fist force. It caused the void to crumble and collapse, and the 2 great demons of Yudu flew back. The demon light protecting their bodies shattered into pieces. Chapter 1234. Shi Tianhao's fist force was extremely violent. Under the reinforcement of the power of the 12 heavenly generals, he executed the 4 symbols world-extinguishing hammer that was passed down in Xianmen Tianzong's direct line of inheritance, shattering the void into chaos. It also shattered the demon light protecting Ningfeng Yudu and Wanlong Yudu, causing their demon souls to become unstable from the tremors. Other than the purple flowing light scattering, there was even silver light bursting out. Ningfeng Yudu gave a long howl, and a triangular green light mark appeared on his head. He executed the Yudu flowing mist essence to attack Shi Tianhao, and Wanlong Yudu, who was beside him, did the same. The ice blue Yudu absolute essence condensed into a line and shot straight at Shi Tianhao. What exactly is that flickering light above his head? I've never even heard of it, much less seen it. Ningfeng Yudu gritted his teeth, and Wanlong Yudu said solemnly, the concept of the paths, skills are similar to the Heavenly Gates teachings that were already destroyed during the last years of the ancient era, but it's also different. It should have been fused with the paths of Xianmen Tianzong, giving it a unique transformation. Rumor has it that Heavenly Gate once refined the city in the sky and the jade falling heavens formation formed by the spirit bodies of the 12 heavenly generals. They were linked together, and they could split and merge as they wished. At their peak, their power could be compared to the Taishu Temple's White Cloud Mountain and the central world of Saha that was shattered by Her Majesty Yu Huang. Purple light surged wildly in Wanlong Yuda's eyes, and there was even an ice blue light flashing within. This thing was rumored to have been destroyed along with Heavenly Gate by the extreme spirits of the Divine Abyss. But from the looks of it now, there's only a remnant left, and it was refined by this person. Ningfeng Yudu gave a grunt, and the green Yudu flowing mist essence instantly changed and spread out in the void. There was no need to specially communicate, and Wanlong Yudu did the same thing. The Yudu absolute essence that was originally gathered into a line also transformed into an ice blue halo that spread out in the world. The 2 Yudu great demons of Star Souls Unite Realm opened their mouths, and starlight spewed out. The starlight that seemed tiny like the light of a firefly suddenly expanded and transformed into numerous dazzling stars that emitted extremely powerful and vast energy that shook the world. When these stars landed in the green Yudu flowing mist splendor and the ice blue Yudu absolute condensation, the stars suddenly became bright and dazzling as though they were burning. After the starlight was dazzling for a moment, it began to perish quickly, and the terrifying power that erupted from it was all added to the green and icy blue light haze. Meanwhile, Yudu flowing mist flower and Yudu absolute condensation flower, these 2 terrifying beams of radiance actually started to fuse together, transforming into a sea of light. This ocean was vast and mighty, and its power seemed limitless. Cutting off a drop of seawater from it could form a terrifying destructive force. The azure sea of light collided with the combined power of Shi Tianhao and the 12 heavenly generals, resulting in an intense collision. Millions and millions of drops of seawater that were hard to estimate exploded one after another, continuously blocking the terrifying power of Shi Tianhao's 4 symbols world-extinguishing hammer. Great Chanyu of the northern militants saw that not only was Shi Tianhao not worried, he even had the upper hand, so he didn't continue to advance. He just stood at the side to support Shi Tianhao. However, Great Sage Lu Yuan didn't just stand at the side and watch. With a sinister expression, he immediately attacked from the side. His right leg had been sliced off by Ningfeng Yudu's Yudu flowing mist flower, and his true form and demon soul were both injured. At this moment, he was truly suppressing a stomach full of anger and hatred. Ning Feng Yudu and Wanlong Yudu were focused on defending against Shi Tianhao's attack, so when Great Sage Lu Yuan ambushed them from the back, they were instantly attacked from the front and back. Under the distraction, the azure sea of light started to tremble non-stop, and it was hard to stop the violent attacks of Shi Tianhao's body of rage god. Light flowed in Shi Tianhao's eyes. Previously, he had been comprehending and refining the city in the sky to help Western Tomb City resist the pressure, allowing him to gradually see his own path of two forms. After continuously analyzing it, the path in front of him was already incomparably clear, and he started to try taking the first step. At this moment, his heart moved, and the spirit bodies of the 12 heavenly generals started to solidify in the void. They shrunk continuously, and in the end, they transformed into 12 golden statues. Meanwhile, Shi Tianhao's body changed from the body of rage god to the body of surplus vitality, which manifested the appearance of the Taiji diagram. His power merged with the 12 golden statues. The 12 golden statues instantly burst forth with astonishing murderous aura, and they were solemn and imposing as they suppressed Ning Feng Yudu and Wanlong Yudu. Under the protection of the 12 golden statues, Shi Tianhao's body of surplus vitality continued to descend, and he forcefully broke through the obstruction of the azure sea of light. Even if the azure light and icy blue radiance that filled the sky were forcefully broken through, they still transformed into boundless destructive light streams that attacked Shi Tianhao from all directions. However, the 12 metal men around Shi Tianhao gave off an aura that seemed to be able to suppress the heavens. It was as if they were indestructible and indestructible, blocking the green and ice blue lights that were like natural disasters. Those terrifying light streams struck the surface of the golden statues like a violent storm, but they were all blocked by the golden statues. They were unable to pass through this firm barrier, and they could only lament their inadequacy. Shi Tianhao's body of surplus vitality controlled the 12 golden statues, and he forcefully passed through the azure sea of light, pressing in front of Ning Feng Yudu and Wanlong Yudu. And at this moment, Shi Tianhao's body of surplus vitality transformed into the Taiji diagram, and in an instant, he transformed into the body of rage god. The 12 golden statues also suddenly dispersed, and they transformed into streams of light that manifested the appearance of the 12 heavenly generals. Violent power assaulted Ning Feng Yudu and Wanlong Yudu, locking them in place and making it hard for them to escape. The air of desolation overflowed from Shi Tianhao's body, and he stretched his hand to grab at the two great demons of Yudu. The huge figures of the 12 heavenly generals seemed to stack together at this moment, transforming into a giant god that supported the heavens. They blessed Shi Tianhao's body, and his power rose rapidly. Ning Feng Yudu and Wanlong Yudu dodged and retreated, but they were still caught by Shi Tianhao's 5 fingers. The sky was filled with green and ice blue light patterns, and the void was continuously shattering. Shi Tianhao laughed, and a dazzling light shot out from the heart of the brows of the body of rage god. It was the divine light of end. One of Ning Feng Yudu's arms was grabbed by Shi Tianhao, and he couldn't struggle free. His demon power was suppressed by the 12 heavenly generals, and he couldn't move. He could only watch as Shi Tianhao's divine light of end shot over. As he roared, he struggled to move back, but his arm was still severed from the shoulder by the light that seemed to be the end of all living things. Shi Tianhao grabbed Ning Feng Yudu's arm, and he looked at the purple blood that was flowing out continuously with a golden radiance. He couldn't help saying with a smile, "Doesn't look too bad." Ning Feng Yudu's arm was severed, and he was finally able to retreat. However, he was still trapped by the power of the 12 heavenly generals' spirit bodies, and he couldn't escape from Shi Tianhao. This great demon of Yudu stared at Shi Tianhao in astonishment and anger. He had always been the one eating others, but at this moment, the gaze that Shi Tianhao was staring at his arm was clearly that of an old glutton. What made him even more astonished and angry was that when Shi Tianhao raised his head, his gaze looked at him again. He examined him from head to toe as though he was looking at a fish on the chopping board. On the other side, ice blue light gathered around Wanlong Yudu's body and enveloped his huge body. It was as though he was sealed in ice, and the ice blue light flowed endlessly to resist the pressure from Shi Tianhao and the 12 heavenly generals' spirit bodies. Shi Tianhao took a look at Ning Feng Yudu, then turned to look at Wanlong Yudu. He said with a smile, "Don't be anxious, don't be anxious, the taste of the two of you looks quite different. I won't eat together, it will affect the taste." It was fine if he didn't say it, but when he said it, not only Ning Feng Yudu was furious, even Wanlong Yudu's eyes turned blood red. As Shi Tianhao smiled, his heart suddenly stirred. He saw Zhanming Yudu, who was at the side, taking a blow from White Tiger Great Sage head-on before rushing over. Two streams of light, one gold and one silver, fused together in a spiral. It was as though the sun and moon were alternating, and they finally transformed into a dark gold light that cleaved down on Shi Tianhao's head. Shi Tianhao curled his lips and released his magic power. He let go of Ning Feng Yudu and Wanlong Yudu, and the spirit bodies of the 12 heavenly generals expanded above his head once again. The spirit bodies formed by the light rapidly gathered and transformed into the 12 golden men. Meanwhile, Shi Tianhao's body of desolate god transformed into the body of surplus essence. On top of the huge Taiji diagram, the 12 golden men stood in 4 directions and sat in the void. They formed a powerful formation to defend against the powerful attack from Zhanming Yudu. "Rise!" With a low shout from the Taiji diagram formed by Shi Tianhao's body of surplus essence, the bodies of the 12 golden men instantly trembled. The huge bodies that were originally sitting in the void stood up in unison at this moment. The 12 golden men stood up together, and their momentum was incomparably powerful as they forcefully resisted against the Yudu sun and moon splendor of Zhanming Yudu. Meanwhile, as the Yudu sun and moon splendor flowed continuously, it was as though it wanted to reverse yin and yang and shake up Shi Tianhao's 12 golden men. Shi Tianhao and the golden men were like divine metal that was nailed to the bottom of the sea in the raging waves. No matter how the sea roared, they persevered and didn't move an inch. No wonder this demon could fight with the old white tiger for so long. Before his divine art and demon power, he is indeed extraordinary. Shi Tianhao thought to himself, "It's a pity my surplus essence desolate god isn't completely cultivated. Otherwise, I wouldn't have to defend so passively. Looks like I still have to cultivate to refine my spirit and return to the void before I can master this divine art." The pressure on Shi Tianhao wasn't small, and Zhanming Yudu's heart sank even more. Even though he thought highly of himself, he had to admit that the situation in front of him was disadvantageous to their Yudu race. This time, he wasn't able to break through Shi Tianhao's defense quickly, and White Tiger Great Sage immediately attacked again. Terrifying and cold starlight descended from the sky, and Zhanming Yudu roared at the sky. Purple light surged furiously around his body, and dark golden light markings shone continuously. The light markings spread out continuously, becoming denser and denser. It dyed the purple light around Zhanming Yudu's body into a piece of dull gold. In the dark gold light that covered the void, stars floated up, and the demon power of this great demon of Yudu instantly became even more violent and vast. At this moment, Ning Feng Yudu and Wanlong Yudu, who had just broken free, didn't wait for the chance to escape. Instead, they executed their demon power and attacked Shi Tianhao as well. The battlefield instantly became incomparably chaotic. Vital qi and spirit power from all sides went berserk, and the void was shattered into pieces. Chapter 1235. Purple blood flowed out continuously from where Ning Feng Yudu's arm had been severed. The essence of the great Tao mixed with Yudu's true blood and floated in the air. Roar! Ning Feng Yudu gave a long howl, and violent green light swirled in the sky. It transformed into countless streams of light that gathered together and condensed into a line. It was like a huge green blade that cleaved at Shi Tianhao, who was defending against Radiant Execution Yudu. On the other side, Wanlong Yudu also had a grave expression. His Yudu absolute condensation essence was the same as Ning Feng Yudu's Yudu flowing mist essence. The icy blue light that filled the sky gathered at one point and attacked Shi Tianhao furiously. Shi Tianhao ignored Ning Feng Yudu and Wanlong Yudu. He continued to use his power to defend against Radiant Execution Yudu. At that moment, White Tiger Great Sage's terrifying attack also landed on Radiant Execution Yudu. In an instant, flesh and blood flew everywhere, and light rained down. Be it Radiant Execution Yudu or Shi Tianhao, who was protected by the 12 metal men, they were both heavily injured. On Radiant Execution Yudu's back, large amounts of silver fur fell off, and purple blood that flashed with golden light splattered everywhere. The dark golden light on his body dimmed slightly. Meanwhile, the Taiji diagram formed by Shi Tianhao's abundant vitality body also had numerous wounds on it, as though it was about to shatter. Cracks also appeared on the surface of the 12 metal men, and the sturdy and indestructible concept of power instantly weakened. Although Radiant Execution Yudu was heavily injured, he still gritted his teeth and turned back to claw. His heavenly light tore apart heaven and earth as he clawed at White Tiger Great Sage. White Tiger Great Sage's eyes were cold and silent. His White Tiger clan's melee combat ability was among the best among all the demon clans, be it in terms of attack or defense. Bright Serene Seer had been fighting with him for a long time, and he had also been careful not to let White Tiger Great Sage get close to him. With a roar, White Tiger Great Sage also swung his claw, which collided with Radiant Execution Yudu's claw. A low muffled sound rang out in the sky. This sound shook the surrounding heaven and earth, and the void was completely shattered. Rays of dark golden light flickered on White Tiger Great Sage's claw like electricity. It caused his sharp claw to tremble, and he couldn't continue forward. However, Zhanming Yudu's claws were dripping with blood, so it was obvious that he had suffered a greater loss. As expected, you're only one tribulation away from completing the first tribulation. Zhanming Yudu's expression was ice cold. The next time we meet, I'll also go through a few more tribulations. If you still haven't reached the last day's realm, then just wait for death. As he said that, the fresh blood on Clear Yuda's claw suddenly surged and transformed into rays of light that landed in the void, forming countless strange light markings. These light markings then gathered together and transformed into an even larger and more profound rune. The rune was completely dark gold and flashed with purple light, intimidating the vast world. Zhanming Yudu gave a low shout, and the dark golden runes suddenly exploded, sweeping up beams of light mist that enveloped him, Ningfeng Yudu, and Wanlong Yudu. They then rushed into the sky. As the White Tiger Great Sage roared, meteors fell from the sky and struck the light pillars that enveloped the three Yudu beasts. The light pillars swayed and shattered continuously, transforming into a rain of light that filled the sky. However, Zhanming Yudu and the other two still continued to fly upwards and escape. Ningfeng Yudu's eyes were bloodshot, and his left claw covered the wound on his right shoulder. He stared at the Taiji diagram and the 12 gold men that were gradually becoming smaller and smaller, and he couldn't help gritting his teeth. Xianmen Tianzong, Wanlong Yudu also stared at Shi Tianhao with a cold expression, but his expression suddenly changed, and his pupils contracted. That was because he saw a resplendent ray of light shooting out from the center of the Taiji diagram formed by Shi Tianhao's body of surplus energy. However, that ray of light was completely different from the divine light of the end. The ray of light in front of his eyes also had countless light patterns surging forth, transforming into layers of auspicious clouds. It seemed to contain all things in the world and the mysteries of the changes of the primordial world. The ray of light shrouded the Taiji diagram, and the numerous damages and cracks on the surface of the Taiji diagram quickly recovered, becoming as good as new. It wasn't healing, nor was it reversing time, nor was it changing between real and fake. Instead, in an instant, it made it seem as if he was in a perfect state. If there was even the slightest change, he would return to his original state. Another ray of Shi Tianhao's divine light of creation, origin. Under the illumination of the origin divine light, not only did Shi Tianhao's injuries quickly disappear, even the 12 gold men trembled slightly and glowed with radiance again. Although the cracks on the surface of the gold men still existed, the indestructible concept of power was established once again, surging forth and connecting together. A front paw isn't enough for me to eat. The Taiji diagram suddenly turned and transformed back into a human form. Shi Tianhao, who had transformed from the body of surplus energy to the body of the desolate god, moved and quickly chased after Zhanming Yudu and the other two with the White Tiger Great Sage. At this moment, the 12 gold men above his head suddenly changed. The bodies of the gold men disappeared and transformed into rays of light. The rays of light condensed continuously in the void, forming a city of light that was completely transparent and resplendent. The spirit energy of the city of light reinforced Shi Tianhao's body, allowing his body of desolate god, which already had astonishing explosive power, to rise another level. He broke through the void and caught up to Zhanming Yudu. At this moment, Zhanming Yudu was busy dealing with the White Tiger Great Sage. Facing Shi Tianhao, who was chasing after them, Wanlong Yudu and Ning Fengyu could only bite the bullet. A ray of purple light flashing with green light and an icy blue light poured down from above like a celestial river hanging upside down. They poured down towards Shi Tianhao, wanting to strike Shi Tianhao down to the ground. However, Shi Tianhao laughed, and resplendent rays of light shot out from the heart of his brows again. It was still the divine light of origin, but this time, it wasn't used on himself. Instead, it was used on Wanlong Yudu and Ning Fengyu. When the absolute Yudu essence was shone on by Shi Tianhao's divine light of origin, it immediately paused in the sky. The icy blue light shook continuously as though it was returning to its origin and vanishing without a trace. Wanlong Yudu frowned, and as his demon power surged, the icy blue absolute Yudu essence condensed continuously to suppress Shi Tianhao's divine light of origin. On the other side, Ning Fengyou's injuries had already started to greatly affect his battle power. The purple light formed by his demon power landed on Shi Tianhao's body, but Shi Tianhao didn't dodge. He just used his powerful body of Rage God to take it head-on. With the protection of Radiant City, the flashing green and violent purple light couldn't hurt Shi Tianhao's body. Shi Tianhao's footsteps didn't stop, and he pressed forward with an indomitable will. He forcefully withstood Wanlong Yudu and Ning Fengyou's attacks and killed his way to the front of the trio. A terrifying aura of desolation spread out on the surface of the body of Rage God, and it was as though there was a primeval universe exploding in that body, evolving the changes of the primordial times. The violent power completely merged with Radiant City, and Shi Tianhao collided with Zhanming Yudu and the other two. On the other side, White Tiger Great Sage's attacks also landed endlessly. Under the pincer attack, the pillar of light that had engulfed the three great demons of Yudu completely shattered. Zhanming Yudu and the other two's escape steps were forcefully interrupted by Shi Tianhao and White Tiger Great Sage. Shi Tianhao let out a breath and shouted. Radiant City transformed into the spirit bodies of the 12 heavenly god generals, and they strengthened his body of Rage God together. He punched out. Driven by his punch, the void in the surroundings seemed to sweep up as well. The power of the world in the heavens strengthened his punch at the same time. That vigorous power instantly made Ning Fengyu and Wanlong Yudu feel suffocated. Zhanming Yudu gave a long howl, and the three long horns on his head flickered continuously. Radiance suddenly flashed around his body, and half of it was gold and half of it was silver. It flowed alternately, and he adopted a defensive posture to seal off Shi Tianhao's punch. However, White Tiger Great Sage's attack came right after. The ice-cold and sharp flowing light landed on the gold and silver radiance in front of Zhanming Yudu like a blade. Even though the gold and silver radiance flowed continuously like the rising and setting of the sun and moon, reversing yin and yang to block the attacks from White Tiger Great Sage and Shi Tianhao, it was also shaking non-stop as though it could shatter at any time. Shi Tianhao dispersed the 12 heavenly god generals, and the shadows of the 12 giant gods filled the void in all directions. They surrounded Zhanming Yudu and the other two in the center. The spirit bodies of the 12 heavenly god generals formed a formation, and it gradually spread out. Countless light formation markings took shape, forming a huge formation that shrouded the heavens. The formation still looked incomplete, but the power inside could already circulate freely, and the jade-green radiance continued to spread into the surroundings. Under the shroud of the jade-green light, the heaven and earth that were in a mess due to the battle gradually stabilized. However, the three Yudu great demons, Zhanming Yudu, Ning Feng Yudu, and Wanlong Yudu, were sealed off by the jade falling all heavens formation formed by the spirit bodies of the 12 heavenly god generals. They suffered attacks continuously in the formation. White Tiger Great Sage and Shi Tianhao were also in the formation, and they attacked Zhanming Yudu's defense forcefully, wanting to smash this iron walnut. That ball of light that was half gold and half silver was like a candle in the wind, swaying non-stop. Great Sage Lu Yuan and Great Chanyu of Northern Militant looked at this sight, and their hearts trembled for a moment. Ever since Yudu race had reappeared, they had run amok in the world, casting a shadow over the entire divine land. Taihua Mountain was given up, and the forces left behind by Taishu Temple retreated to the stronghold on White Cloud Mountain. They had even attracted the chi of dragon veins from Great Zhou and Great Qin, but in the end, they were still breached by Yudu race in a short time. Even though the main force of Taishu Temple and the Haotian Mirror had entered the mysterious sea, their battle power still raised the eyebrows of everyone in the human world of cultivation in the divine land. When the current monastery master of Taishu Temple, Yan Nanlai, broke out, he was chased by 3 great demons of Yudu. But now, the 3 great demons were all trapped, and they were about to fall under the hands of Shi Tianhao and White Tiger Great Sage. Even though they were defending with all their might, the defense was like a straw hut in a storm. It was on the verge of collapse, as though it would collapse at any moment. Great Sage Lu Yuan and Great Chanyu of Northern Militant had long known the power of White Tiger Great Sage. In comparison, the power displayed by Shi Tianhao was even more shocking. Ever since he had rushed to Western Tomb City to help Great Qin Empire get through a crisis, Shi Tianhao had suppressed Ning Feng Yudu and Wanlong Yudu. Even though they hadn't experienced the calamity, the strength of their demon power and divine arts were even stronger than some great demons who had just experienced the calamity. However, at that moment, Shi Tianhao was fighting 1 against 2 with the support of Sky City. He beat up the 2 great demons of Yudu until they found it hard to defend themselves. Afterward, he even fought against White Tiger Great Sage, executing Light Yudu. Such an achievement shook the entire Heaven Primordial Great World. Thinking about Wang Lin and the rest, Great Sage Lu Yuan and Great Chanyu of Northern Militant sighed in their hearts. Under the master of Xian Gate, another disciple had grown into a strong practitioner that could make the entire Heaven Primordial World look over. He was starting to walk towards the center of the grandest stage in this world. Chapter 1236. Yan Nanlai was also surprised by the results of Xian Men Tianzong's battle. Even though his body kept on escaping, Yan Nanlai's consciousness was still paying attention to the battle behind him. He had a rough idea of the abilities of the strong practitioners of Yudu that were chasing him from White Cloud Mountain. Especially Zhanming Yudu, who was undergoing the first calamity and had also participated in the Battle of White Cloud Mountain. Yan Nanlai was clear that the strength of the great demon's divine arts and demonic power was almost on par with White Tiger Great Sage. Even if it was slightly inferior, it was still enough to fight with White Tiger Great Sage. The true victor would only be known after a real battle. The changes in the battle later also verified Yan Nanlai's guess. Ning Feng Yudu and Wanlong Yudu had also displayed extremely powerful battle abilities, surpassing even Lu Yuan the Great Sage and Northern Militant Great Chanyu. However, the abilities that Shi Tianhao displayed afterward, suppressing Ning Feng and Wanlong, and fighting against Zhanming, made Yan Nanlai feel slightly astonished. Even though the distance was extremely far, Yan Nanlai could still feel the concept of suppressing the heavens and all methods returning to the stream. Compared to others, as the current monastery master of Taishu Temple, Yan Nanlai had a deeper understanding of the concept of power. There were numerous historical records in Taishu Temple, so even though Yan Nanlai had never seen it personally, he could confirm that it was the aura of power that came from the combination of the ancient heavenly sect Sky City and Jade Falling Heavens formation. Looks like the Sky City really didn't shatter completely back then. Yan Nanlai muttered to himself. In that case, the power that helped Western Tomb City block the calamity wasn't White Tiger. It was the power of Shi Tianhao in the Sky City. Yan Nanlai raised his head to look at the sky. Senior brother Kuang, you also made a mistake back then. A myriad of thoughts flashed through Yan Nanlai's mind. Sensing that Shi Tianhao, White Tiger Great Sage, and the rest had the upper hand in the battle behind him, and that the 3 great demons, including Zhanming Yudu, could no longer chase after them, Yan Nanlai completely immersed his mind into the ritual of the curse of blood soul calming. Through continuous deductions, Yan Nanlai gradually determined the direction and distance to where the king of the underworld and the rest were. At the same time, as one of the strong practitioners of Taishu Temple who could execute the Haotian mirror, he could clearly feel that the Haotian mirror was being shaken continuously. The situation was becoming more and more dangerous. However, just as he continued to fly forward, Yan Nanlai's heart suddenly jolted. He saw the space before him suddenly break apart, and a figure appeared. It was a middle-aged Taoist wearing a black Taoist robe. His complexion was like jade, and he had a 3-foot-long beard. His demeanor was rather outstanding, but his skin was extremely pale, causing him to give off an eerie feeling. Seeing this person's appearance, Yan Nanlai frowned slightly. Taoist Yu Ming. The newcomer was none other than the third disciple of the king of the underworld, Taoist Yu Ming. He was a cultivator at the first tribulation stage, and had studied under the king of the underworld for many years. His magical powers were astonishing, and even though he was unable to draw upon the power of the netherworld sea, his skills were not to be underestimated. However, he was currently blocking Yan Nanlai's path. What caught Yan Nanlai's attention the most was the scroll in his hands. Seeing that scroll, Yan Nanlai's pupils shrank slightly. The Book of Life and Death. The Book of Life and Death, which seemed like an ordinary ancient book, seemed ordinary, but it emitted a terrifying energy fluctuation. Taoist Yu Ming calmly looked at Yan Nanlai and said, "The current head of the Taishu Temple. Greetings, Netherworld." Yan Nanlai was well aware that he had used the ritual of Curse of Blood Tranquility to find the location of the King of the Underworld and Yan Xinghe. But on the other hand, the King of the Underworld, who had refined Yan Xinghe into an evil soul, would also be able to sense his actions through this trace. When Yan Nanlai used the Curse of Blood Tranquility to sense the location of Yan Xinghe's evil soul, Yan Xinghe could also roughly sense Yan Nanlai's location. Yan Xinghe, who had been refined into an evil soul, couldn't be immune to the Curse of Blood Tranquility. As long as Yan Nanlai was willing to sacrifice his life, he could drag Yan Xinghe down with him. The King of the Underworld was also clear about this point, and he was also taking precautions against it. To him, Yan Nanlai being trapped in White Cloud Mountain by the Yudu race was naturally the best outcome. When the King of the Underworld sensed that Yan Nanlai had successfully broken out of White Cloud Mountain and executed the Curse of Blood Tranquility, the founding emperor, the King of the Underworld, immediately sensed it. Thus, he activated his backup plan and sent Taoist Yu Ming to block Yan Nanlai with the Book of Life and Death, preventing him from getting close and having the strength to complete the ritual. Different from the previous test, the King of the Underworld was now presiding over the ritual with the evil soul of Yan Xinghe, and the wavering of the Haotian mirror had officially begun. They had entered a stage where they couldn't be interrupted or disturbed. After experiencing the wavering, the Supreme One Venerable and the rest in the mysterious sea also noticed something was amiss and started to plan a plan. Even though the King of the Underworld really wanted to beat the grass and alert the snake, using a simplified ritual that could be stopped at any time to lure Yan Nanlai to death and get rid of the hidden danger, that would give the Supreme One Venerable and the rest in the mysterious sea more time to prepare, making it harder for them to snatch the Haotian mirror. The King of the Underworld would never underestimate the abilities of the cultivators of Taishu Temple. Furthermore, all along, the King of the Underworld had kept his guard up against Lin Feng. Now that Lin Feng was rushing to the aid of White Cloud Mountain and going against the Yudu race, the King of the Underworld had finally gotten rid of his biggest worry, and he could let loose. However, the exact changes in the battle between Lin Feng and the Yudu race was something the King of the Underworld couldn't predict or control. Even he couldn't estimate when the battle on White Cloud Mountain would end and how it would end. Especially since he could faintly feel that Lin Feng's heaven-punishing sword was still sealed. To prevent any accidents from happening, the King of the Underworld could only grab the chance in front of him and activate the ritual with all his might. Even though there was a certain risk because of Yan Nanlai's existence, the unpredictable situation still made the King of the Underworld decisive. At this moment, Taoist Yu Ming brought the Life and Death book to stop Yan Nanlai, which was to get rid of the hidden danger that he had predicted. Silently, Taoist Yu Ming looked at Yan Nanlai. The descendant of Yan Xinghe, he shook his head and didn't say anything more. He directly flipped the mysterious Life and Death book in front of him, and the resplendent brilliance on the book instantly transformed into a huge pillar of light. It burst forth and transformed into a grey world of the dead. Every page of the book seemed to be a world of its own, and every page seemed to record the lives and deaths of tens of thousands of lifeforms. This gray world seemed to be connected to the entire Great Thousand World, yet at the same time opposing it. It actually activated some of the Great Thousand World's energy, as if it was the true destination of the billions of lifeforms in the Great Thousand World after they died. Even though Yan Xinghe had broken out of the White Cloud Mountain, he had also suffered injuries. His situation was better than what the king of the underworld and Taoist Yu Ming had expected. Taoist Yu Ming didn't say anything more and directly activated the powerful power of the creation treasure, the life and death book, to suppress Yan Nanlai. Yan Nanlai's expression was calm as he said indifferently, "Have you arrived?" Taoist Yu Ming's gaze moved slightly as he raised his head and looked towards the other side of the sky. He saw the void in the horizon crack open, and rays of purplish-gold brilliance shone. Within the endless purplish-gold brilliance, a vague shadow appeared. It was heavy, vigorous, domineering, and majestic, as if it was carrying the weight of the country, and its might was overlooking the world. Countless talismans and curses flew around, accompanied by the purplish-gold brilliance that spread out in all directions. The huge shadow in the light gradually revealed its true form. It was a palace that looked like a city. The main hall, the side hall, the courtyard, the platform, and the tall building formed a palace that looked like the residence of a celestial king. It was like the sun in the sky, filled with the majesty of a king. This was the creation treasure refined by the Grand Emperor in the past, which later fell into the hands of the Great Zhou Empire, the Grand Emperor Palace. The domineering and majestic aura made even Taoist Yu Ming, who had the life and death book, frown. The power and aura are complete, and the principles and concepts are flawless. This feeling. Has the Grand Emperor Palace completely recovered? In the Grand Emperor Palace, a middle-aged man dressed in a dragon robe sat on the dragon throne. He was the ruler of the Great Zhou Empire, Emperor Liang Pan of Zhou. Liang Pan said silently, "Yan Guan Lord, please leave first." Yan Nanlai's gaze landed on the majestic Grand Emperor Palace. After sizing it up, his gaze became deep as he nodded. "Thank you." Emperor Liang Pan of Zhou replied indifferently, "The war between the two worlds is of great importance. The Great Zhou Empire will naturally contribute and fight for the human race." Yan Nanlai didn't say anything else. His figure turned into a stream of light and fled. At this moment, Taoist Yu Ming's gaze was no longer on him. Instead, he placed all his attention on the Grand Emperor Palace before him. The Grand Emperor Palace shone with boundless brilliance. A powerful force that could dominate the world spread out. The entire world trembled as if it wanted to prostrate itself at the feet of this celestial palace. The pages of the life and death book flipped continuously. Rays of brilliance flashed as if it was wary of the strength of the opponent before it. The name of a person and the shadow of a tree. Even the life and death book, which was also a creation treasure, felt pressured when it faced the number one treasure of the human emperor that had returned to its peak. Emperor Liang Pan of Zhou and the Grand Emperor Palace fought against Taoist Yu Ming and the life and death book. Yan Nanlai followed the guidance of the blood-soul calming spell and continued to rush towards the location of the king of the underworld and Yan Xinghe's evil soul. However, Yan Nanlai didn't feel relaxed. Although the king of the underworld was also presiding over the ritual and couldn't be distracted, he also had many strong subordinates. Taoist Yu Ming wasn't the only one. However, Yan Nanlai was like an arrow knocked on a bowstring. He had no choice but to release it. He sped along the way and suddenly stopped. His gaze pierced through space and stared into the distance, seemingly unable to see. Yan Nanlai took in a deep breath. His hands continuously changed as white clouds appeared. They turned into black and white streams of air that continuously revolved around Yan Nanlai. At the same time, rays of golden light appeared on Yan Nanlai's body. Under the contrast of the black and white streams of air, they gradually condensed into a strange talisman. The drop of blood that had previously guided Yan Nanlai was now fused into the strange talisman. A layer of blood immediately appeared on the surface of the talisman. It looked sinister and mournful. Yan Nanlai did not stop casting his spell. However, at this moment, the void suddenly trembled. Suddenly, masses of blood clouds appeared, covering the sky. The blood clouds split apart. From within, streams of sticky and smelly nether blood rivers flowed out. Following the streams of blood, large amounts of blood river true water dripped down, raining down a terrifying rain of blood.